Chapter 290. At dawn the next day, Leng Shiqi came to the back mountain of Wuxiang Palace. Wuxiang was already waiting here. Leng Shiqi came early because he was afraid he would be later than Wuxiang, but he was still late. Wuxiang said directly, "Next I will suppress my cultivation to the early stage of the spirit pulse realm. You have to be determined to kill me and use your strongest spirit technique to kill me. If you can force me to move my body or use power beyond the early stage of the spirit pulse realm, you win." Leng Shiqi didn't speak. A heavy wooden spear appeared in his hand. This was the level 4 spirit tool Astral Wood Spirit Spear he bought at a high price. Holding the spear, Leng Shiqi's aura was unparalleled. The tip of his spear thrust forward, and the spear body suddenly drew a huge gray cross in the air as it rushed over. Leng Shiqi didn't test it and used the formation breaking cross spear right away. However, Formless only extended a finger and lightly flicked it. The cross-shaped light disappeared into nothingness, and the tip of the spear was stopped by Formless' finger. Brave and unparalleled, this spear is not bad. However, you didn't have the resolve to die when you charged into the enemy's formation, nor did you have the resolve to kill me. Therefore you are still somewhat lacking. Leng Shiqi expected the formation-breaking cross spear to be easily broken, but it was also unexpected. What he didn't expect was that Wuxiang would be able to break through his attack so easily. Moreover, his spear was a level 4 spirit weapon, yet it couldn't even hurt Wuxiang's finger? He could clearly feel that Wuxiang only used the power of the early stage of the spirit pulse realm. But how did he do it? This wasn't just perfect control of power, it also meant that Wuxiang's body was terrifyingly strong. Leng Shiqi's body wasn't weak, but it wasn't enough in front of Wuxiang. Since he was already close, Leng Shiqi put away his spear and punched. A tiger phantom pounced with the power to break rivers and sink oceans. Wuxiang directly slapped away the tiger's shadow, and the invisible inner strength that entered his body did not have any reaction. Both inside and outside. Not bad, but the overall power is not enough. This was also a problem that Leng Shiqi had discovered. He was also trying to integrate Violent Lion's Fury Forest Fist into Tiger's Wave-Stomping Fist. However, he had been studying swordsmanship and illusions in the secret realm and had not had the time to study the fist art. On the contrary, Falling Blossoms and Dazzling Blossoms had already merged together. Leng Shiqi's fist didn't work, so he used another palm. The 6 palms combined into 1.5 feet tall palm shadow with faint flames smashed down with a loud bang. The formless palm slashed downwards, instantly splitting the 6 yang poison fire palm into 2 halves before dissipating in mid-air. What a vicious palm strike. You have some skills. However, it's strong on the outside and weak on the inside. Once it encounters an extremely ferocious spiritual technique, it will collapse upon contact. Leng Shiqi had yet to discover the weakness of the 6 yang poisonous fire palm that Wuxiang had mentioned. The follow-up of this palm strike could be strengthened from this aspect. Next, Leng Shiqi used Earth Fiend Demon Claw, Violent Lion's Fury Forest Fist, and Blood Sky Finger respectively. All of them were easily broken by Wuxiang. However, when he used Blood Sky Finger, Wuxiang muttered, "It's actually at the Great Perfection stage." He knew that Leng Shiqi had chosen this spiritual technique in the Blood Book Hall. At that time he had also blocked Leng Shiqi there. Therefore Wuxiang also knew that Leng Shiqi had only used this spiritual technique for 3 months. To be able to cultivate a level 4 spiritual technique to the Great Perfection stage in 3 months, Leng Shiqi's comprehension surprised him. However, what he didn't know was that Leng Shiqi had only used a dozen breaths of time to cultivate Blood Sky Finger to the Great Perfection stage. Every time Wuxiang broke a move he would point out the weakness of the move. Leng Shiqi had fewer and fewer things that he could take out. Soon after he retreated and his mental energy surged. His left hand lit up with faint starlight and then a giant ice sword nearly 2 feet long whistled out. What surprised Leng Shiqi was that Wuxiang also formed a spiritual seal with his hand and formed an even more powerful giant flame sword. Leng Shiqi's giant ice sword melted before it even got close. In the end, it turned into a cloud of mist like a moth to a flame. Wuxiang is also a spiritual caster. This was the first time Leng Shiqi knew of Wuxiang's ability. He couldn't help but be surprised, because he found that Wuxiang's spiritual technique, physical strength, and mental power were all very strong. This was very similar to him. It was also at this moment that Leng Shiqi vaguely felt that it wasn't a coincidence that Wuxiang took him as a disciple. But now was not the time to be distracted. He formed a series of seals and flames surrounded his body to form a giant pillar of fire that shot out. The giant flame sword collided with the pillar of fire and exploded. Waves of fire spread out and scorched the surrounding ground. When the waves of fire dissipated, Leng Shiqi was wearing a set of pitch-black demon armor. Wuxiang carefully looked at Leng Shiqi's demonic beast blood pattern armor. He felt traces of killing intent from Leng Shiqi. He nodded and said, "Interesting. You finally have the resolve to kill me." The black jade sword was unsheathed. The sharp blade of the level 5 spirit artifact spat out a glaring sword light. Leng Shiqi's spirit and mental power quickly circulated. His aura climbed higher and higher. When his aura reached its peak, Leng Shiqi suddenly disappeared. He suddenly disappeared in front of Wuxiang's eyes. At this moment, countless beautiful flower petals fell from the sky. It was so beautiful that it was intoxicating. But there was a huge killing intent hidden in these flower petals. Suddenly the flower petals spun and shot towards Wuxiang. It turned out that each flower petal was a sword energy. Wuxiang murmured, "He actually pulled me into an illusion in an instant. Illusionary and real, real and fake. This move is not bad." At this moment, to Wuxiang's surprise, 36 phantoms appeared out of thin air and surrounded him. Each phantom was a sword light that intersected with the sword energy in the air. From afar, it formed the illusion of a giant flower. In an instant, the sword light raged and the sword energy rampaged. Chaotic flower's dazzling eyes. Combining movement, sword energy and illusion into one. This was the true chaotic flower's dazzling eyes. Wuxiang finally became cautious. He formed a sword with his finger and a sharp sword intense sword into the sky. Suddenly, countless invisible sword energy burst out and instantly destroyed all the phantoms and flower petals. But he still looked around vigilantly. He did not relax at all because he did not find Leng Shiqi's real body. The next moment, a long river of sword light broke out from the ground and stabbed at Wuxiang's chassis. "Insidious!" Wuxiang shouted in a low voice and pressed down with his palm. An invisible force pressed down, preventing Leng Shiqi's sword from moving forward. But at this moment, Leng Shiqi changed his sword for a sword. A cold sword light slashed out as if it was splitting the sky. Wuxiang felt a chill in his crotch and his whole body trembled. Chapter 291. Inside Wuxiang Palace, Leng Shiqi sat weakly on a chair while Wuxiang paced back and forth with lingering fear. Not long ago he almost lost his little brother. Leng Shiqi's flash in the pan took more than 80% of his strength, but it also allowed Wuxiang to use strength that exceeded the early stage of the Spirit Pulse realm. In other words, Leng Shiqi won. However, ever since they came back, Wuxiang had been pacing back and forth. Leng Shiqi was a little dizzy, but he couldn't say anything. After a while, Wuxiang finally stopped and said to Leng Shiqi, "Master has nothing to teach you. As long as you can make up for the shortcomings I mentioned, you can at least beat one person." Leng Shiqi heard what he said. It seemed that this bet wasn't one-on-one, so he asked, "Master, what are the rules of the bet?" Wuxiang replied, "It's an arena battle. Whoever stands on the arena in the end will be the winner. If it was an arena battle, then there might be a situation of 1 versus 2 or even 1 versus 3. However, before Leng Shiqi could think about it, a gray-clothed disciple appeared outside the door. "Master Wuxiang, Delta Orgi wants to see Leng Shiqi." "Delta Orgi is here?" Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. Wuxiang immediately pulled Leng Shiqi and said, "TSK, you're quite capable. Don't forget what Master said, get a few spirit techniques." Leng Shiqi didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he guessed that Delta Orgi was here for the spirit techniques. After a while, Leng Shiqi brought Delta Orgi back to his small courtyard. Delta Orgi went straight to the point and said, "The 300 drops of blood have been given to me. I'm here to fulfill my promise." Leng Shiqi said politely, "If I hadn't accepted the mission to assassinate Ozu, causing a delay of 3 months, I'm afraid you would have already been promoted to a blood-clothed assassin. But if it weren't for this trip, I wouldn't have seen the heavenly phenomenon of the southern divine peak, and my cultivation wouldn't have advanced so quickly. You won't realize that there is such a big gap between us." At this point, Delta Orgi's tone had a complicated meaning. Leng Shiqi knew that Delta Orgi's competitive nature was showing again. In this trip to the southern divine peak with Delta Orgi, the strength shown by Delta Orgi was far inferior to that of Leng Shiqi, whether it was against Ozu or the pursuit of Gang Spirit Realm. Although Delta Orgi was already very strong among the same level, she knew very well that the gap between them and Leng Shiqi was huge. Unknowingly, Leng Shiqi had left her in the dust. This made her very uncomfortable. This matter had instead become the motivation for Delta Orgi to cultivate even harder. Now she was no longer curious about the colorful world outside. She just wanted to improve her strength as soon as possible. Delta Origi continued, "Before doing the mission, I promised to give you spiritual skills. But we've only done one mission, and I've already thought of a way to get the remaining blood drops, so I can only give you a third-level spiritual skill as a reward." Okay. Lung Shichi could accept it completely. He even felt that he had made a small profit. Delta Origi took out a piece of paper with the names of 4 spiritual skills written on it. "Pick one." Lung Shichi looked at it and asked, "Why don't you just give me the secret manual of the spiritual skill? If that was the case, he could directly use his infinite skill points to learn it. That would be a huge profit." Although Delta Origi was wearing a mask, Lung Shichi could feel that she was rolling her eyes at him. "It's too troublesome to write them one by one. Besides, do you think I don't know that you have a photographic memory? You still want to take advantage of me?" Lung Shichi smiled embarrassedly. Fortunately, with the mask, he didn't make a fool of himself. Then he carefully looked at the contents of the paper. The 4 spiritual skills on it were Triple Origin Cyan Spirit Sword, Impermanent Steps, Shifting Bone Technique, and Red Poison Curse. Lung Shichi directly eliminated the first 2. He didn't need the third-level blade and movement techniques at the moment, so he could only choose between the remaining 2. The Shifting Bone Technique was a spiritual skill that could slightly change one's body shape. Lung Shichi had a human skin mask and a voice-changing technique. If combined with the Shifting Bone Technique, he could change into many different identities. It was a practical spiritual skill that could conceal one's identity. The Red Poison Curse was a spiritual skill that was similar to a curse. The reason why Lung Shichi wanted this spiritual skill was because his centipede curse could no longer keep up with his cultivation. Before the 4th realm of heaven, the centipede curse was still very useful. However, for spirit cultivators in the spirit pulse realm, the centipede curse was easily suppressed. For example, the black-veiled woman last time, she only used a few breaths of time to suppress the centipede curse. He believed that she would be able to expel the centipede curse from her body in no time. Therefore, Lung Shichi also wanted a spiritual skill that could control others. But after pondering for a while, he finally chose the Shifting Bone Technique. He wanted the Red Poison Curse, but he currently had the ability to control illusions, so he didn't need it. Moreover, he could use his blood droplets to exchange for this kind of spiritual technique. However, the Shifting Bone Technique was different. He often went out, so it was very important to conceal his identity. Moreover, this spiritual skill was probably related to the Bone Demon, so it probably couldn't be exchanged. Thus, Lung Shichi said, "I want the Shifting Bone Technique." Delta Origi said, "I knew you would choose this. I've already prepared it for you." As she spoke, she took out a secret manual. "This spiritual skill can't be taught to outsiders, but Master said that you performed well in the Southern God Peak, so he made an exception." Lung Shichi didn't understand what the Bone Demon meant by performed well. However, since it was personally instructed by the Bone Demon, he felt even more at ease. "I just started cultivating the Shifting Bone Technique, so I don't have any insights to give you. Of course, I don't think you need it. By the way, although I believe you won't do this, I still have to say that you can't spread it." "Of course," Lung Shichi said seriously. Then he changed the topic. "You should know about the bet." Speaking of this, Delta Origi's body tensed up. She said seriously, "I know. This matter is very important. We can only win, not lose." Lung Shichi said, "You don't have to put too much pressure on yourself. The disciples of the Lioha spiritual region have their advantages, but we also have advantages that they don't have." "I understand what you're saying. This is also the method I mentioned before to obtain large amounts of blood drops. What do these two have to do with each other?" Lung Shichi couldn't help but be puzzled. Delta Origi said, "Of course it's related. If we win the bet, do you think we'll win for nothing? When the time comes, I'll ask the sect for blood drops. They'll definitely agree." This is indeed a method. Lung Shichi nodded. He also wondered if he should ask for something if he won. Chapter 292. 10 days later at the Bloodkill Hall. All the big shots of the Blood Robe Pavilion had arrived. The 2 pavilion elders, the pavilion leader, Hateful Blade, the vice pavilion leader, Ink Frost Ghost, and the disciplinary grand elder, Bone Devil, were all present. Other than them, there were Formless, Lung Shichi, Delta Origi, Yushu, and Hungming. After so many days, Lung Shichi finally got to see Yushu and Hungming. Yushu was still the same black-robed assassin. He was currently wearing a mask that only revealed his eyes and winking at Lung Shichi. As for Hungming, he still had that unapproachable expression on his face. It seems like they haven't changed much, Leng Shiqi thought to himself. He had thought that Yushu would change after becoming the pavilion master's personal disciple. He thought that Yushu would look down on him, the disciple of the underworld Bloodkill Pavilion. Then Yushu would use his powerful cultivation to slap him in the face. But that was not the case at all. The four of them had stood out from tens of thousands of people. If they didn't even have that little bit of temperament, it would be a waste. Not long after, 5 people walked into the Bloodkill Hall. The one at the front was an old man with an elegant temperament. He didn't have the slightest bit of aura, but every step he took felt like he was stepping on the pulse of heaven and earth. It was as if he had become one with heaven and earth. Behind the old man were 4 youths, 3 boys and 1 girl. They all looked to be around 15 or 16 years old. The 4 of them looked left and right curiously, as if they rarely went out of the house. However, the cultivation bases of these 4 youths were extremely terrifying. 2 were at the peak of the spirit transformation realm, and 2 were at the spirit vein realm. They were the geniuses of the 6 direction spiritual zone, the opponents of Leng Shiqi and the others. After these people entered the Bloodkill Hall, Hateful Blade and the others stood up to welcome them. Only the 2 elders remained seated. Hateful Blade said, "Elder Shao, please excuse me for not going out to meet you." Elder Shao said bluntly, "We don't have much time. Let's begin." Hateful Blade didn't say anything. He used his palm as a blade and chopped down. With his palm as the center, ripples appeared in the space. Those ripples spread out, covering the entire Bloodkill Hall. Leng Shiqi was shocked to find that the surrounding scenery had suddenly changed into a grassland. He was stunned at first. Then he rubbed the ground with his feet and realized that the grass and soil on the ground were all real. Huge waves of emotions surged in his heart. Changing space with a flip of his hand, what kind of heaven-defying ability was this? At this time, Elder Shao also looked deeply at Hateful Blade, and a trace of fear flashed through his eyes. Those big shots didn't have any special reaction, but the 4 young men and women couldn't help but exclaim. Delta Origi and the others were also shocked, but they did not show it. Elder Shao coughed lightly, and the 4 youths immediately restrained their expressions and calmed down. Hateful Blade said, "Let's do it here. You should be clear about the rules. Let the battle begin." As soon as Hateful Blade finished speaking, the atmosphere instantly became heavy. Yushu hugged a long blade and walked forward a few steps. He laughed and said, "My name is Yushu from Yushu. Who wants to exchange a few blows with me?" His tone was full of frivolity, as if he didn't care about the other party at all. The 4 disciples of the Lioha spiritual zone's expressions changed. Some of them even showed a trace of anger. Elder Shao frowned slightly at first, but he immediately calmed down and didn't say anything. A young man in luxurious clothes walked up. His eyes were filled with anger as he said, "Humph, arrogant. I Shao Fu will let you know what it means to say that there is always someone better than you." This person was one of the spirit transformation disciples of the Lioha spiritual zone, Shao Fu. The bracelet on his right wrist flashed slightly, and a gorgeous spirit blade appeared in his hand. Leng Shiqi's eyes narrowed. He had clearly seen that Shao Fu was using a mustard seed bracelet. A mustard seed bracelet was also a storage spirit tool, but its storage space was far greater than a mustard seed bag, and it was better at hiding. However, the value of a mustard seed bracelet was far greater than a mustard seed bag. Shao Fu was only at the spirit transformation realm, but he could wear a mustard seed bracelet. From this, it could be seen that the Lioha spiritual zone's foundation was indeed very rich. Yushu's attention was completely focused on Shao Fu's spirit blade. The handle and blade of the blade were inlaid with light blue gems, and it looked very gorgeous. Yushu said, "You also use a blade. Sure, you can show me some moves." Shao Fu seemed to be even angrier. He didn't answer and directly attacked with his blade in anger. However, his blade aura was very ethereal. The light blue gems on the blade flickered endlessly, and then a blade light like a blue moon spilled out. This blade was stunning. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but secretly nod. Although Shao Fu's temperament wasn't very good, his strength was truly strong. This blade was actually somewhat similar to the waning moon rapid light slash he had first comprehended. However, the difference was that his waning moon rapid light slash pursued extreme sharpness, while Shao Fu's blade pursued ethereal intent. This kind of blade aura was inevitably a bit flashy. The blue moon fell, but Yushu didn't panic at all. He unsheathed his spirit blade and slashed out with a blade aura. However, his blade aura was strange and ruthless. It was like a storm that directly shattered Shao Fu's blue moon. Shao Fu's expression changed slightly. His blade aura immediately changed, becoming dignified and majestic. The two completely opposite blade auras continued to clash, and the spectators were a bit dazzled. However, anyone with a discerning eye could see that overall, Xiaofu had the upper hand. Delta Orgi asked Leng Shiqi, "Who do you think will win?" Leng Shiqi said, "Both of them are at the peak of the spirit transformation realm, but Xiaofu's cultivation method is clearly better than Yushu's. His spirit force is 30% stronger than Yushu's. In addition, Xiaofu's spirit technique and spirit blade are stronger than Yushu's. If this continues, Yushu will undoubtedly lose." "Then what do you mean? Yushu will win?" Delta Orgi didn't understand. "You were the one who said Yushu was inferior to Xiaofu, and now you're the one who said Yushu will win?" Leng Shiqi whispered, "I know Yushu better than you do. Just watch." In the battle, Xiaofu continued to suppress Yushu. At this moment, Yushu was clearly at a disadvantage and even showed signs of defeat. Xiaofu's blade emitted a faint blue light. He found a flaw in Yushu's defense and slashed down. "Puchi." Xiaofu's blade cut deeply into Yushu's shoulder. He sneered, "Aren't you arrogant? Try being arrogant again." Seeing this, the other three disciples of the Six Unity spiritual realm all revealed expressions of relief. However, Yushu also smiled strangely. In the next moment, a saber had appeared in his left hand at some unknown time. Immediately after, a blade aura as fast as light slashed toward Xiaofu's throat. Chapter 293. Leng Shiqi had personally experienced Yushu's trick of exchanging injury for death. Xiaofu's saber was stuck in Yushu's flesh, and he thought that he had won, so he lowered his guard a lot. Unfortunately, the more dangerous it was. Yushu's sudden attack was too fast for Xiaofu to react. Just as Yushu's blade was about to behead Xiaofu, Xiaofu's figure suddenly disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he had appeared beside Elder Xiao. Elder Xiao said in a low voice, "Xiaofu has lost this round." Xiaofu was still in a state of shock. If Elder Xiao hadn't stepped in to save him, he would have been dead by now. However, he didn't understand. He was stronger than Yushu in every aspect, so how did he lose? No. If this wasn't a bet but a fight to the death, he would already be dead. However, he still wasn't convinced. He still had a few powerful spirit techniques that he hadn't used, and he also had trump cards. These were all his methods to win. Elder Xiao's voice appeared in Xiaofu's mind, "You're the one who's really arrogant. Now do you understand how terrifying the Blood Garment Pavilion disciples are? Their cultivation methods, spirit techniques, and spirit artifacts may not be as good as yours, but they've all climbed out of a pool of blood. Their battle experience and ability to choose between life and death far exceed yours." At the same time, his voice also reached the ears of the other three people, and their expressions all became serious. Although Yushu had won, Xiaofu's attack was very deep and almost cut off his right arm. At this moment he used his spirit energy to seal the wound, but he didn't leave. He raised his head and said, "Who else?" Leng Shiqi couldn't help but admire Yushu when he heard that. Yushu's taunt skill was really maxed out. As for the other three Lioha spiritual region disciples, their serious expressions were instantly replaced by anger. They had never been looked down upon like this before. When Elder Xiao saw this, he secretly sighed in his heart. The temperament of these few disciples was still a little lacking. Wuxiang quietly stood on his tiptoes at the side. He seemed to be in a good mood. Another youth with a jade crown on his head from the Sixth Direction spiritual region walked over and said, "Sixth Direction spiritual region, Wan Rui. You're already heavily injured. You're no match for me. Admit defeat." Yushu grinned and said, "Even so, I can drag you down with me. Do you believe me?" Wan Rui appeared to be calmer than Xiaofu, but he was also quite arrogant. He shook his head and said, "Stubborn? I only need one move to defeat you." He wasn't careless either. His hands became as translucent as jade, and with a slap of his palms, the force of 1,000 caddies came crashing down. Wan Rui actually wanted to use force to suppress others. Leng Shiqi also felt that Wan Rui's choice was correct. Yushu was already heavily injured, and there was no way he could defend himself. At this moment Yushu closed his eyes. In less than an instant he opened them again. Both of his eyes had turned pitch black, without the slightest bit of white in them. Black gas appeared on the blade in Yushu's left hand. He slashed out without any blade energy. Wan Rui thought that Yushu had given up on resisting, but this seemingly ordinary slash strangely passed through Wan Rui's arms and went straight for his head. Wan Rui was shocked. His hands released bursts of jade-colored spirit light. His hands suddenly doubled in size and grabbed Yushu's blade. His hands were filled with great power, and he was actually able to squeeze Yushu's blade until it cracked. However, Wanrui couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Yushu wasn't lying. He really could drag him down with him. At the same time, Wanrui's other hand slammed down and a glaring jade light surged. At this moment, Yushu had used up all his strength and no longer had the ability to resist. He could only quickly shout, "I admit defeat." Wanrui's movements paused, but Yushu laughed sinisterly. "However, you used 2 moves, haha." Wanrui's face was as ugly as if he had eaten a fly. He did say that he could defeat Yushu in 1 move, but in the end he still used 2 moves. The people watching were either the higher-ups of both sides or the genius disciples. This made him feel a little embarrassed. Yushu walked back to Leng Shichi's side and secretly gave himself a thumbs up. Elder Mu flicked his finger and a ray of green light entered Yushu's right shoulder. The originally terrible wound quickly healed in a few breaths of time. Yushu immediately touched his wound in amazement. Then he immediately became lively again. He actually gave Wanrui a thumbs up and then gestured down a few times. Wanrui's eyes burned with anger when he saw this. He squeezed out a sentence through gritted teeth. The Blood Cloak Pavilion is one of the 7 absolutes, but its disciples are acting like this. What an eye-opener. However, the people of the Blood Cloak Pavilion were unmoved. The only one who moved was Xiongming. He walked forward without saying anything. A pair of black fist blades appeared on his arms and killing intent rose in his eyes. Next was the battle between Xiongming and Wanrui. Wanrui didn't dare to underestimate any of the Blood Cloak Pavilion disciples now. He sized up Xiongming. However, he suddenly realized that Xiongming was just standing in front of him, but he had a feeling that he was going to ignore Xiongming. This very strange feeling made him feel a little uncomfortable. He said, "What is your name, sir?" Xiongming didn't answer his question. His body flashed and his fist blades, which carried traces of demonic qi, arrived in front of Wanrui. When Wanrui saw Xiongming attack without even greeting him, he thought to himself, "The people of the Blood Cloak Pavilion are all crazy." However, he didn't slow down. His hands shone with layers of jade light, and he suddenly slapped out with a magnificent aura. With a ding, Xiongming's fist blades clashed with Wanrui's jade-like hands, producing a clanging sound. Xiongming's body moved again. He constantly moved around Wanrui, constantly looking for an opening. Wanrui, on the other hand, used defense as offense. He relied on the strength of his jade-like hands to deal with all kinds of changes. Xiongming was very fast, but Wanrui was strong enough to defeat all of them. Every time they clashed, Wanrui had a slight advantage. If this continued, Xiongming would probably be exhausted and defeated. However, Leng Shichi, Delta Origi, and Yushu weren't in a hurry. They all knew that among the 4 of them, Xiongming was the one who was best at hiding his strength. He probably had some kind of backup plan. After another attack, Xiongming was forced to retreat. This had happened several times already, and Wanrui was getting a little impatient. At that moment, an almost undetectable wisp of blood hidden in the demonic qi silently shot towards Wanrui. He only just noticed it when it was about to touch him. Leng Shichi was slightly surprised to see that wisp of blood. It was the Line Blood Heavenly Finger. Xiongming had also cultivated the Line Blood Heavenly Finger, and judging from the speed of the wisp of blood, he had already mastered the technique. This sudden wisp of blood caught Wanrui off guard. He reached out with one hand wanting to crush the wisp of blood. However, the most powerful thing about the Line Blood Heavenly Finger was its penetrative power. The wisp of blood pierced through his jade-like hands, but his jade-like hands had already dimmed. Wanrui secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, what he didn't know was that a cloud of demonic qi appeared behind him, and a figure emerged from it. It was Xiongming. Another Xiongming. Chapter 294. Another Ming Ming had appeared behind Wanrui, but Wanrui didn't notice it at all. Leng Shichi was a little stunned as well because he couldn't tell which one was the real body of the infernal underworld. His eyes under the mask turned white, and he was able to tell that the Ming Ming behind Wanrui was the real one. Wuxiang muttered, "Ink Frost Ghostly being even taught the underworld ghost clone, Yushu learned the Death Intent Strike, and Delta Origi learned the Ghost Bone Ice Fire Sword. TSK, it seems like I'm the only one who didn't teach Leng Shichi anything." His voice wasn't loud, but he was close to Leng Shichi, so Leng Shichi heard what he said. Leng Shichi was speechless. The scene of the battle naturally fell into the eyes of the people from the 6 Unity spiritual region. They could only watch but they could not say anything. Once they reminded Wan Rui, it would mean that they had lost. Wan Rui looked at the blood sky finger that had blocked a sliver of the blood sky finger, and then saw the infernal underworld stabbing towards him. Finally he stopped defending. He took a step forward and a powerful aura rushed toward him, blowing his hair. Yushu yelled, "Half-step spirit pulse realm." That's right, the aura Wan Rui was displaying was the aura of someone who had transformed their sea of qi into a spiritual sea. He only needed to open one more spirit pulse to reach the spirit pulse realm. So Wan Rui had been hiding something. Wan Rui clapped his hands and a violent wave of palm energy rushed out, shattering the Meng Ming in front of him into a cloud of black mist. Wan Rui paused for a moment, and then he felt a chill behind him. He turned around, and the other Meng Ming behind him was surrounded by demonic qi, which condensed into 8 spider-like demonic spikes that stabbed at his vital points. Wan Rui yelled and his body lit up with a faint jade glow, but he was too late. The demonic qi of the Meng Ming easily tore through his jade glow, and just as it was about to kill him, Wan Rui took out a jade stone from his mustard seed bracelet. At this moment Elder Shao said, "We admit defeat." "Elder, I haven't lost yet." Wan Rui held the jade stone in his hand and said unwillingly, "Enough, come here." Wan Rui didn't dare to disobey Elder Shao's words, so he could only leave the stage. This also meant that he had lost. But he felt that he hadn't lost. "Haven't you noticed that Hengming has been trying to get you used to his attack rhythm? He did it on purpose. From the beginning to the end, all of your reactions were under the control of others, but you were completely unaware of it. I'm very disappointed." Elder Shao's words entered his mind, causing his entire body to tremble. In his battle with Meng Ming, he had indeed thought that Meng Ming was the kind of person who was skilled in movement techniques and flexible in his attacks. Indeed, he had slowly figured out Hengming's tactics. Initially, he thought that he would be able to win if he played it safe. However, Tong Ming's blood heavenly finger suddenly changed. For Wan Rui, the power of this move was not very strong, so he blocked it. But what he never expected was that the blood heavenly finger was only a means to attract his attention. It was all for the sake of unleashing the real killer move without anyone noticing, that strange shadow. Thinking of this, Wan Rui looked at Hengming with a trace of shock. His direct combat strength was much higher than Hengming's, and he also had trump cards that he hadn't used, but he had still lost. He had lost to Hengming's battle rhythm. At this moment, Hengming's face was deathly pale, and his body was slightly swaying. However, a trace of fear appeared in Wan Rui's heart. The Blood Robe Pavilion had won 2 battles in a row, which made the people of the 6 Direction spiritual region feel a little incredulous. Before coming, Xiao Fu and Wan Rui had come with the mentality that they would definitely win. Although the 6 Direction spiritual region and the Blood Robe Pavilion were both on the world sect ranking, they had never really taken the disciples of the Blood Robe Pavilion seriously. In fact, they even wanted to have fun on this trip. However, now that Xiao Fu and Wan Rui had been defeated in a row, it was equivalent to a slap in the face. Fortunately, this was an arena battle, not a one-on-one battle. As long as the final victor was one of their people, the 6 Direction spiritual region would still win. Therefore, the most important thing was still to see the battle between the Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators. After winning, Hengming didn't continue to stay like Yushu. Instead, he directly walked back. He knew that the next battle would be between the Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators, so there was no need for him to continue fighting. "I'll go first." At this moment, Delta Origi's voice sounded. Then she lightly stepped forward and stood upright. The remaining 2 people from the 6 Direction spiritual region were a man and a woman. They discussed in low voices for a moment, and the young girl also went up to fight. This young girl didn't use any spiritual power, but she gave off a lively feeling just by standing there. She said in a crisp voice, "Yun Meng Si." "Delta Origi." "Delta Origi? What a strange name." Yun Meng Si tilted her head slightly and muttered. Delta Origi couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with her. All the bones in her body creaked, and her hair turned silver white. Her aura then skyrocketed. Then she spun the bone sword in her hand and ignited layers of ghost fire. Netherworld chi spread out in all directions. Delta Origi didn't probe at all. She actually used such a powerful spiritual technique right from the start. Yun Meng Si's beautiful face changed slightly, but she didn't panic. Her hands flew like flowers, forming one spiritual seal after another. It was full of beauty. She was actually a spiritual caster. A spiritual caster of the Spirit Pulse realm. Spiritual casters would undergo a qualitative change after entering the four realms of the sky realm. If they were compared to other cultivators of the same cultivation, their fighting strength would definitely be extraordinary. In the blink of an eye, dozens of wind blades suddenly appeared behind Yun Mengxi. On each wind blade, there was a strange mark that faintly flashed. The wind blades trembled slightly and emitted a wung-wung sound. Then she lightly tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and floated backwards. At the same time, the dozens of wind blades whistled out. The wind blades sliced through the air and emitted ear-piercing sounds. However, Delta Orgi turned a deaf ear to them. The bone sword in her hand waved out sword shadows, shattering the wind blades one after another. Then the ghost fire on her bone sword flourished. A faint death chi rose up and pervaded the surrounding area. She waved her arm and slashed out a glaring ghost fire sword beam. Yun Mengxi had been locking her fingers together. Around her, 3 differently colored spheres of light emerged, each releasing a different sense of power. One was as sharp as gold, one was as hot as fire, and one was as heavy as a mountain. Finally, they formed the gold, fire, and mountain imprints respectively. The mountain imprint lit up first. Immediately, a faint yellow light spread out and suppressed the death chi. Then the gold imprint flickered incessantly. Layers of gold light shields appeared in front of Yun Mengxi, blocking Delta Origi's sword beam. Finally, the fire imprint trembled and fire arrows shot out one after another. However, Delta Orgi didn't dodge. The ghost fire and the flame collided and easily destroyed all the fire arrows. While Yun Mengxi was stunned, Delta Orgi had already approached her. In front of my ghost bone cold fire sword, ordinary flames don't deserve to exist. Delta Orgi stabbed out. It seemed like only one stab, but in fact she had stabbed out dozens of times in an instant. So many sword shadows overlapped, gathering an unimaginable power. Yun Mengxi's red lips slightly opened and said a strange word, "Na." Then the 3 imprints around her began to twist rhythmically. Gradually the 3 imprints merged into one. A terrifying wave of spiritual energy rippled out. A golden spear as heavy as Mount Tai and burning with raging flames appeared out of nowhere. Yun Mengxi actually held the spear in her hand and swept out. The surrounding 200 to 300 feet was instantly covered by a dense golden light. Waves of violent waves swept over everyone. Yushu and the other spirit transformation realm disciples turned pale and retreated. Elder Xiao and Wu Xiang both took action to protect their disciples. Leng Shiqi's eyes narrowed. Yun Mengxi's strength was indeed a little beyond his expectations. This was the true combat strength that the disciples of the 6th Direction Spiritual Zone should have. However, he wasn't worried about Delta Orgi at all. Because when the light dissipated, Delta Orgi's figure was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 295. When all the light dissipated, Delta Orgi's figure strangely disappeared. Yun Mengxi's heart tightened. Shortly after, wisps of will-o'-the-wisp sword light suddenly appeared above her head, forming a sword net that descended upon her. Yun Mengxi's expression finally changed. However, an exquisite bell appeared on her wrist. She shook it lightly and a crisp sound rang out. Layers of sound waves visible to the naked eye surged out, forming a semicircular spiritual shield. The sword net fell, and the ghost fire swords continuously cut at the spiritual shield, producing an extremely ear-piercing sound. The sound wave spiritual shield kept on twisting, but it still managed to forcibly take on the sword net. Yushu immediately shouted, "Cheating, she's cheating. There's something strange about this bell." If Yushu could see it, so could the others. When Yun Mengxi took out the bell, Leng Shiqi noticed that there was a spiritual technique sealed within the bell. In other words, the sound shield that protected Yun Mengxi just now wasn't her spiritual technique, but an ability that came with the bell. However, this couldn't be considered cheating. It could only be said that her spiritual tool was exquisite enough. At this moment, Delta Orgi's figure strangely appeared beside Yun Mengxi. Just as she was about to launch a sneak attack, Yun Mengxi smiled proudly. Leng Shiqi instantly had a bad feeling. Sure enough, a circular spiritual formation instantly appeared under Yun Mengxi's feet, and countless needle-like streams of water appeared. The streams of water swept out like a storm, as if they wanted to swallow Delta Orgi whole. Water countered fire. Yun Mengxi knew that Delta Orgi's ghost bone-chilling fire was incomparably powerful, so she used the endless streams of water to break it. Facing so many streams of water, even Delta Orgi couldn't dodge. Since she couldn't dodge, then she wouldn't dodge. A bloodline quietly appeared on Delta Origi's blade. That was the spiritual technique that came with the Seven Fiends art, Carnage Blood. As soon as the bloodline appeared, the ghost fire was instantly dyed into blood flames. Blood flames appeared in the world, and blood fiendish energy spread out. Delta Origi stabbed out with her sword, and in a split second, blood energy soared into the sky, almost wiping out all the water currents. However, there was still a lapse in concentration, and several streams of water still pierced her body. Fortunately, the impact was not great. Up until now, both Delta Origi and Yun Mengsi had used their trump cards one after another, but neither side could do anything to the other. If they continued to fight like this, they would only be able to compete in terms of spiritual power. Perhaps Yun Mengsi's cultivation method was slightly better than Delta Origi's, but Delta Origi's cultivation was indeed at the peak of the first level of Spirit Pulse realm. Therefore, their powers were almost the same. How long would that take? Moreover, there was still a battle coming up. If they could preserve some of their spiritual energy, they might be able to exhaust a portion of their opponent's spiritual energy. At this moment, both of them had the same thought, and that was to decide the outcome of the battle with one move. Delta Origi's originally thin body suddenly became even more delicate, but her aura had already reached the second level of the Spirit Pulse realm. Blood flames rose around her body as her fighting spirit soared higher and higher. A mystical imprint appeared on Yun Mengsi's forehead, and boundless spiritual power surged continuously. She quickly formed hand seals, and every time she formed a spiritual seal, a few streams of light would gather above her head. Gradually, the shadow of a small palace appeared there. Both of them were accumulating power and waiting to attack. The first to move was still Delta Origi. Her bone sword trembled and let out a hiss. The dense blood fiendish energy and blood flames fused together, and suddenly, a blood-colored sword light slashed out like a waterfall. Yun Mengsi pushed her hands forward, and the shadow of the palace in midair let out a pleasant sound. That sound contained an invisible power, and instantly dispersed a portion of the blood-fiendish energy. Then, the shadow of the palace bloomed with a boundless light, and a sound that didn't seem to belong to the mortal world came out. That sound seemed to come from the ancient times, and it shook the heavens and earth, suppressing everything. Delta Origi's blood-colored waterfall was actually shaken to the point that it almost dissipated from the illusory sound of the blade. Then Delta Origi suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. She wasn't injured, but she spat it out on her own accord. That was her blood essence. The blood all fell onto the bone sword, and suddenly, a ferocious blood aura rose into the air. The blood-colored waterfall expanded by a large amount, and tore the shadow of the palace apart. The blood-colored waterfall didn't lose its momentum, and it slashed towards Yun Mengsi. However, an arm suddenly appeared from the shadow of the palace. It waved lightly, and the huge blood-colored waterfall instantly shattered like a bubble. Delta Origi was hit by the blood essence backlash, and she spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Her body returned to its original state, but she swayed and almost fainted. At this time, a figure held her shoulder and she didn't fall. While Yushu shouted angrily, "Do you still want your face?" That arm clearly didn't belong to her. What Yushu said could be seen by everyone present. The power emitted by that arm had far surpassed the power of a spiritual pulse realm cultivator, and even the power of a spiritual aperture realm cultivator. That definitely wasn't Yun Mengsi's own power. If Yun Mengsi really had such power, the Blood Robe Pavilion would have just admitted defeat. What was the point of fighting? Before this, Yun Mengsi had used that bell, which was more or less acceptable. But this time it was true that he had cheated. The 5 Sky Origin Realm cultivators of the Blood Robe Pavilion, including Wu Xiang, all took a step forward. They didn't say anything, but their meaning was obvious. Elder Shao also sighed helplessly. Yun Mengsi is a genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. It's normal for her to have some tricks up her sleeve to protect her. It's just that I didn't think that she would be forced out in the middle of the battle. Why don't we call it a draw? A draw. If that arm hadn't appeared, Delta Origi would have already won. Why would they call it a draw? The people of the Blood Robe Pavilion were naturally unwilling. Pavilion Master Hateful Blade said, "You and I are both in the Sky Origin realm. Can't you see the direction of the battle?" Delta Origi won. Elder Shao shook his head and said, "That might not be the case. Yun Mengsi is also proficient in several spiritual formations, which can be activated in an instant. Even if there were no external objects to stop her, she wouldn't have lost. Therefore, a draw is the best result." Elder Shao wants to fight on paper? Hateful Blade's words had a hint of sarcasm. Elder Xiao was actually feeling very bitter. They were indeed in the wrong, but if Yun Mengxi lost, their six-direction spiritual region would have lost 3 matches in a row. Even if they won the last match, it would be hard to explain when they returned. However, at this moment Leng Shiqi, who was supporting Delta Origi, said something that shocked everyone. Delta Origi lost this match. What? Yushu exclaimed. Xiongming also looked at Leng Shiqi in surprise. Even the disciples of the six-direction spiritual region had expressions of disbelief. However, Leng Shiqi looked at Yun Mengxi with a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. Chapter 296. The reason why Leng Shiqi said this was because regardless of whether it was a draw or a win for Gu San, Yun Mengxi would still participate. Leng Shiqi didn't want her to step down. Delta Origi sensed Leng Shiqi's murderous intent and said, "I admit defeat." This. Yushu and the others looked at each other. Yun Mengxi was obviously cheating, but they couldn't say that Delta Origi would win. Therefore, it wasn't unacceptable for this battle to be considered a draw. However, Delta Origi admitted defeat, which confused Yushu and Hengming. As for Hateful Blade and the others, they remained silent. Since Delta Origi admitted defeat, they could only accept it silently. Formless crossed his arms and looked like he was waiting to watch a good show. Leng Shiqi whispered to Delta Origi, "Go and rest. Leave the rest to me." Delta Origi didn't force herself this time and nodded obediently. After Delta Origi left, Leng Shiqi's eyes turned colder and colder. He said, "I am Leng Shiqi. Please enlighten me." Yun Mengxi also thought that it would be best for her and Delta Origi to end up in a draw. She wasn't confident that she could defeat Delta Origi, but she also didn't think that she would lose. Therefore, when Delta Origi admitted defeat, she couldn't help but be stunned. What surprised her more was that Leng Shiqi made this decision for Delta Origi. Delta Origi actually did this. What was their purpose in doing this? Yun Mengxi couldn't figure it out. However, when she saw Leng Shiqi's ice-cold gaze, she felt a chill in her heart that went straight to her soul. She vaguely understood what was going on. Leng Shiqi didn't hesitate at all. He raised his right arm and 36 demonic patterns appeared. After the spiritual pulse realm, one could condense 9 demonic patterns every time they broke through a realm. The 36 demonic patterns made Leng Shiqi feel like his arm was filled with explosive power. He stretched out his 5 fingers and his palm turned into a pitch-black demonic claw. In an instant, demonic aura rose around him and a demonic claw half the height of a human formed. Earth Fiend Demonic Claw. Yun Mengxi didn't dare to be distracted. She quickly formed a hand seal, and as her spirit energy flashed, flames and golden light flashed. The demonic claw tore the flames and shattered the golden light, but it also dissipated into nothingness. Leng Shiqi was also a spirit caster, so he naturally knew the weakness of spirit casters, which was that there was a short buffer period between spirit techniques. The reason he used the Earth Fiend Demon Shadow Claw was not to injure Yun Mengxi in the first place. Instead, it was to take advantage of this momentary gap. Before the claw shadow completely dissipated, Leng Shiqi punched out. The shadow of a ferocious tiger suddenly jumped out and pounced forward. Yun Mengxi didn't expect Leng Shiqi to attack so quickly. She didn't have time to form a hand seal. Mental energy surged between her eyebrows, and a green formation suddenly appeared in front of her. Layers upon layers of green light intertwined, like the roots of a towering tree overlapping with each other. The green light blocked the shadow of the tiger, but the internal energy within it went through the green light and attacked Yun Mengxi. Yun Mengxi immediately felt a huge force coming at her, but her clothes flashed with spirit light to dissolve the internal energy. She only took a few steps back. What shocked her was that Leng Shiqi had appeared beside her without her noticing. Leng Shiqi used his palm as a knife. In an instant, hundreds of knife auras shot out, killing everything in their path. Yun Mengxi still didn't have time to form a hand seal. She spat out another word. Boom. Something strange happened. The air seemed to vibrate rhythmically, shattering the knife auras one after another. Leng Shiqi's 3 consecutive attacks didn't yield any obvious results. The other 3 disciples of the Lioha spiritual zone smiled. Only Elder Xiao frowned more and more. In fact, Leng Shiqi was also a little surprised. Yun Mengxi was proficient in the spirit seal style, the spirit incantation style, and the spirit formation style. She was indeed a rare genius. But she had to pay the price today. Yun Mengxi had just shattered the knife auras when another 5 bloodlines shot out. Each bloodline was condensed to the extreme and aimed at her fatal spots. This was also the blood heavenly finger, but it was performed by a Spirit Pulse Level 3 cultivator. It was the blood heavenly finger of the perfection stage. Ah! Yun Mingxi suddenly screamed in the face of danger. Violent mental energy surged out. At this moment she had no choice but to overdraw her mental energy. She didn't form a hand seal this time. Instead, the shadow of the palace appeared in the air again. But what she didn't know was that Leng Shiqi had been waiting for this moment. Leng Shiqi's eyes flickered with a strange light. One of his eyes was enough to shake people's hearts and souls. The other eye looked lifeless, but it contained the terror of life and death. He performed the soul-scaring technique and the mind-stealing technique at the same time. Originally, this level 3 illusory technique was almost useless against a Spirit Pulse Realm cultivator like Yun Mingxi. But Yun Mingxi had already exhausted a lot of her mental energy in the fierce battle with the Delta Origi. Now Leng Shiqi was forcing her to overdraw her mental energy. This way, although she could explode with powerful mental energy for a short period of time, she wouldn't be able to resist the illusory technique. The shadow of the palace above Yun Mingxi's head had just taken shape, but it suddenly disappeared. Even Yun Mingxi herself stood there in a daze, motionless. Leng Shiqi formed a sword with his fingers. Dozens of invisible channel unblocking sword auras shot out and pierced into Yun Mingxi's body mercilessly. Not only did the channel unblocking sword auras leave wounds all over her body, but they also caused blood vessels to appear all over her body. More than half of the meridians in her body were sealed. This time she was really in a situation where she was bound to lose. Seeing this scene, Elder Shao sighed inwardly. However, it was already very good that Yun Mingxi could hold on until now. On the other hand, the other three people had yet to recover from Yun Mingxi's sudden defeat. Just a moment ago the two of them were still fighting back and forth. Seeing that Yun Mingxi was about to explode, she suddenly froze. They had all subconsciously thought that Leng Shiqi was a martial artist, so they had overlooked the possibility of an illusory technique. However, to everyone's surprise, Leng Shiqi did not stop there. His eyes suddenly shone with a terrifying murderous intent. He struck out 6 palms and the 6 palms combined into one. Instantly, a huge palm of demonic flames came crashing down. There was only one ending for a defenseless martial artist when faced with such a palm, and that was death. Elder Shao was immediately enraged. How dare you? Just as he was about to intervene, a figure suddenly appeared beside him. It was Hateful Blade. Elder Shao, the battle is not over yet. If you intervene, it will be equivalent to admitting defeat. Hateful Blade's sudden appearance shocked Elder Shao. He said in a low voice, I admit defeat on behalf of Yun Mingxi. Bang! However, Leng Shiqi's 6 solar poisonous fire palms still struck Yun Mingxi's body. The boundless power of the palm and the sinister demonic flames engulfed her. Fortunately, she finally regained some consciousness at the last moment. Spiritual light flashed on her clothes continuously and blocked a portion of the power of the palm. Even so, she was still sent flying. Furthermore, the poisonous fire attacked her heart and she immediately spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. The scorching flames burned her clothes and seared her hair. She was in a pitiful state. After falling to the ground, she immediately fainted. At this moment, Leng Shiqi suddenly slapped his head regretfully and said, Oh no, Elder Shao was a little slow. I did not stop in time. Chapter 297. Elder Shao's face was completely gloomy. He shouted in a low voice, Is the Blood Garment Pavilion trying to ruin the bet this time? The threat in his words was obvious. If Hen Dao hadn't stopped him just now, he could have saved Yun Mingxi at any time. It was obvious that Hen Dao's actions were intentional. However, Hen Dao said, The disciples of the Blood Garment Pavilion have always followed the rules in the competition. Yun Mingxi didn't admit defeat, so Leng Shiqi continued to attack. No matter how you look at it, we are in the right. Elder Shao shook his head secretly. This was back to the matter of Yun Mingxi being forced to use her protective trump card. The 6th direction spiritual region was indeed in the wrong, and because of this, the Delta Origi was seriously injured. However, he was the one who brought Yun Mingxi here. Now that she was in such a state, it would be difficult for him to report back. At this time, Wuxiang cursed at Leng Shiqi, You little bastard, how dare you be so heavy-handed to a disciple of the 6th direction spiritual region? She's a girl, why don't you know how to be gentle with her? His voice was very loud, but there was no hint of blame in his tone. Leng Shiqi also said very cooperatively, Elder Shao, fellow disciples of the 6th direction spiritual region, I'm not good enough and didn't stop for a moment. Please forgive me. Elder Shao knew that the Blood Garment Pavilion was giving him a way out. He also knew that the Six Direction Spiritual Region and the Blood Garment Pavilion joining forces was the region master's idea. As an elder, he actually didn't have much authority. In the end, he could only use silence to cover this matter. He didn't pay any attention to Leng Shiqi. Instead, he helped Yun Mengxi up and fed her a pill. Miraculously, Yun Mengxi woke up in an instant, and the fire poison in her body was also cleansed. After Yun Mengxi woke up, the first thing she looked at was Leng Shiqi, and the expression in her eyes was unusually complicated. Leng Shiqi didn't look at Yun Mengxi. Instead, he looked at the last youth. He was the person from the Six Direction Spiritual Region who hadn't made a move yet. As long as they defeated him, the Blood Garment Pavilion would win. This youth had a strong physique and a resolute face. His body was full of vitality, and it was obvious that he had also cultivated a body-refining technique. He walked over with a crimson spear in hand, his battle intent surging. Leng Shiqi's expression froze. He could feel that this was a formidable opponent. Six Direction Spiritual Region, Gongye Mingxiu. As Gongye Mingxiu stood there, his entire body seemed to have fused with the long spear. He didn't make any movements, but he gave off an extremely dangerous feeling. As Leng Shiqi had exposed many of his moves during the fight with Yun Mengxi just now, he decided to observe the situation and test Gongye Mingxiu's actual strength first. Gongye Mingxiu didn't hold back as well. He shook the spear in his hand, and there were actually traces of lightning flowing on it. After that, the lightning spear suddenly whipped over like a whip. Although this spear technique was a spear technique, there seemed to be a hint of a staff technique within it. It was extremely ferocious. Leng Shiqi took a deep breath. Using the spirit steps, he flew backward quickly, and at the same time, he unleashed a few frost sword energies to neutralize the wind generated by the spear. Bang! Gongye Mingxiu stomped on the ground with one foot, and his body shot out like a sharp arrow that had left the bow. He thrust his spear forward, and the body of the spear blossomed with a crimson light. It smashed down from the sky like a red sun, and its imposing manner was extremely shocking. Leng Shiqi didn't dodge this time. The astral wood spirit spear appeared in his hand as well. Then, his eyes widened slightly, and his entire body emitted an imposing manner of charging into enemy lines alone. Charging into enemy lines would only lead to death. He thrust his spear forward like Gongye Mingxiu, but the difference was that the tip of his spear drew out a huge cross of spirit light. The crimson sun was cut apart by the cross of spirit light, and the tips of the two spears collided with each other accurately. Instantly, an ear-piercing sound of collision was heard. Then, an invisible force spread out from the tip of the spear, and it stirred up gusts of wind. Leng Shiqi immediately felt an enormous force pass from the body of the spear to his arm, and it shook him to the point that the web between his thumb and forefinger cracked, and his arm went numb. The strength of Gongye Mingxiu's body was actually stronger than his. On the other hand, Gongye Mingxiu retreated 2 steps, and he was even more shocked in his heart. After this attack, he could feel that his body was stronger than Leng Shiqi's, and his spirit spear was better than Leng Shiqi's. His spirit techniques weren't inferior to Leng Shiqi's either. However, while he retreated 2 steps, Leng Shiqi didn't retreat. He was actually at a disadvantage in this attack. He found it hard to understand. He also somewhat understood the difficulties of Xiao Fu and Wan Rui. However, Elder Xiao saw through the reason behind this. It was because Leng Shiqi's spear thrust was filled with the will to die, and Gongye Mingxiu had always treated this as a competition. Unknowingly, his imposing manner had already fallen to a disadvantage. Not only him but the 3 people from before were also the same. However, Elder Xiao didn't have any intention of blaming them. He also knew that this had always been the drawback of the Liuhe spiritual region's disciples. In fact, their disciples didn't lack battle experience, and they would often spar and compete with each other. However, the Blood Clothing Pavilion's disciples had all climbed out of a sea of blood and piles of corpses. Facing such an opponent, Gongye Mingxiu and the others' biggest weakness was that they didn't have the experience of fighting with their lives on the line. When Wu Xiang saw Leng Shiqi's spear, he muttered with satisfaction, "He's improved a little." After his attack failed, Gongye Mingxiu let out a low roar and began a frenzied attack. Every thrust of his spear was wide open, and the spear was filled with flames and traces of lightning. Its power was astonishing. In the blink of an eye, Leng Shiqi was forced to retreat again and again. Under the sky full of spear shadows, Leng Shiqi was like a small boat in a huge wave, and could capsize at any time. Leng Shiqi naturally couldn't continue like this. Then he unsheathed his inky jade sword, and his sword swept out like a river. Streaks of dark green sword light and spear shadows constantly clashed, and countless sparks were created. It was even more dazzling. All of a sudden, Leng Shiqi's sword style changed. It became soft and gentle like a gentle breeze brushing the willows. The two completely opposite sword styles were instantly switched in his hands, causing Gongye Mingshu, who had already adapted to Leng Shiqi's attack rhythm, to have an unusual feeling of suffocation. However, his reaction wasn't slow either. His spear style also changed and became like a long whip. However, Leng Shiqi's sword style changed again. Sometimes it was fierce, sometimes it was light, sometimes it was as fast as a rainbow, and sometimes it was as slow as a willow catkin. This was the great perfection of the 17 sword styles of Mount Song, and it was vividly displayed by Leng Shiqi with his 5th-level spirit sword. The constantly changing sword style made Gongye Mingshu a little overwhelmed. Although he was also good at different spear styles, he certainly couldn't be as free and flexible as Leng Shiqi when switching between styles. Gradually, Leng Shiqi suppressed Gongye Mingshu. Gongye Mingshu knew that he couldn't continue like this. He swatted away Leng Shiqi's inky jade sword with his spear. Then, his expression turned serious, and he formed a mystical spirit seal with one hand. What was even stranger was that the spirit seal was actually imprinted on his own body. Immediately, blazing flames and tyrannical lightning surged around Gongye Mingshu's body. He stood there safe and sound like a Balrog or thunder god. Chapter 298. Gongye Mingshu suddenly erupted with such a powerful aura, causing everyone to be slightly shocked. Xiao Fu said coldly, that Leng Shiqi can force senior brother Gongye to use the Crimson Thunder Insight. He's quite capable, but that's it. Wan Ruei added, that's right. Senior brother Gongye's cultivation is comparable to the middle stage of the spiritual pulse realm. Leng Shiqi will definitely lose. Only Yun Mengxi didn't speak. She knew that Leng Shiqi could use illusions to temporarily control her, a spirit caster. It was obvious that Leng Shiqi's mental strength was extremely powerful. Moreover, he was also good at illusions. She had to be careful. Unfortunately, before Gongye Mingshu stepped forward, she hadn't completely woken up and forgot to remind him. If she said it now, it would be considered cheating again. Leng Shiqi's mind moved, and his body was instantly covered in a set of ferocious armor that looked like a giant demon. His aura suddenly soared to the middle stage of the spiritual pulse realm. He swung the black jade sword horizontally, and 36 demonic patterns appeared. A sword ray that combined the intent of sharpness and heaviness flashed past in an instant. Other than Wu Xiang and Delta Origi, everyone else showed varying degrees of surprise. Xiao Fu and Wan Ruei both widened their eyes. Leng Shiqi's current state was even stronger than Gongye Mingshu's. They had just said that this wave was in the bag, and in the blink of an eye, such an unforeseen event had occurred. While they were shocked, they also felt ashamed to the point of being unable to show their faces. Yun Mengxi's eyes were not only filled with surprise, but also a bit of fear. If Leng Shiqi used this move during the battle with her, she would have lost long ago. Even a few Sky Origin Realm experts stared at Leng Shiqi's demonic beast blood rune armor, as if they wanted to figure it out. Old Blockhead transmitted his voice to Old Bones. Can you see anything mysterious about it? Wonderful. It contains blood chi, demonic chi, and demonic chi. How did he fuse these three completely different types of power together? There's the aura of the Bloody Slaughter 7 Fiend art here. Did this kid change the Bloody Slaughter 7 Fiend art? Very likely. This child is truly a genius. Our decision to let him live was correct. Meng Ming clenched his fists tightly. No one knew what he was thinking. As for Yushu, his mouth was wide open and his saliva was almost flowing out. He said, so handsome. At this moment, a hint of worry appeared in Elder Xiao's eyes for the first time. On the other hand, Gongye Mingshu was the calmest of them all, because all of his thoughts were focused on how to defeat Leng Shiqi. Gongye Mingshu's figure moved. Intense flames and tyrannical thunderbolts soared into the sky before abruptly smashing down. Leng Shiqi swung his black jade sword, and more than 200 blue frosty sword chis surged in the sky, destroying the soaring flames and lightning. At the same time, a penetrating cold air and an incomparably hot wave of fire gushed out from his body at the same time. Ice and fire were two substances that naturally countered each other. But at this moment in Leng Shiqi's hands, they actually fused together perfectly. The cold air and the flames intertwined together like a small tornado whistling out. In the 10 days before the battle, Leng Shiqi did not waste his time. His greatest gain was that under Wuxiang's guidance he was able to fuse Spirit Assault, Path of Ice and Spirit Assault, Bombardment of Flames together. It became a fire and ice tornado that was comparable to a 5th-level spiritual skill. Seeing this scene, Wuxiang smiled proudly. When some people smiled, of course there were also people who wanted to cry, such as Gongye Mingxiu. How could he have expected that Leng Shiqi was such a powerful spiritual caster? Although the sudden loss of the Dream Cloud Silk had made him suspicious, he had never thought in this direction. But Gongye Mingxiu was also stimulated with a trace of ruthlessness. His body suddenly arched strangely, but it looked strangely beautiful, as if all the muscles and strength in his body had been adjusted to a perfect state. Then, the flames and lightning around his body twisted and turned, gradually forming the shape of a dragon. And the spear was the dragon's head. Gongye Mingxiu's body suddenly pounced, turning into a large dragon and red lightning, and directly collided with the fire and ice tornado. With a loud boom, huge airwaves exploded with flames, cold air, and thunderbolts. The area within a radius of dozens of meters was turned into a mess. The experts of the Blood Clothing Pavilion and Lioha Spiritual Region all retreated with their disciples. The flames dissipated, and a broken dragon appeared. The dragon spat out a spear tip that shone with dense spiritual light, and it instantly pierced through Leng Shiqi's figure. We won. Oh no. The disciples of both sides had completely opposite thoughts. However, Gongye Mingxiu was stunned because he did not feel his body being pierced. In other words, the Leng Shiqi in front of him was a fake. Sure enough, Leng Shiqi's body suddenly burst like a bubble, and turned into gorgeous petals that gently fluttered. Gongye Mingxiu looked up vigilantly. Unknowingly, countless petals were sprinkling down from the sky around him. It was like a rain of petals, beautiful and magnificent. At this moment, Gongye Mingxiu was about to be intoxicated by this beautiful world of flowers, but he suddenly bit his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was shocked and said in his heart, I was almost pulled into an illusion. Then the countless petals rapidly spun, and then shot towards Gongye Mingxiu. Each petal was actually a sword chi. However, there were real and fake sword chi and it was impossible to guard against. Gongye Mingxiu held his spear horizontally above his head, and all the spiritual energy in his body converged on the spear. Suddenly, flames rose and lightning flashed. He wanted to use force to break the technique. However, when his attention was completely focused on the sky, dozens of Leng Shiqi suddenly appeared, and dozens of violent sword chi engulfed Gongye Mingxiu. Gongye Mingxiu turned pale with fright. Facing the sword chi and sword chi that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, he felt a trace of the threat of death for the first time. This made him want to use his life-saving trump card, but if he did that, he would be able to resolve the current crisis, but he would also lose. At this moment, a huge palm blotted out the sky and instantly destroyed all the sword chi and sword chi, and the sky was completely swept clean. It was Elder Shao. This time, Hateful Blade did not stop him. Because if Elder Shao made a move, it meant that Gongye Mingxiu had lost. At the same time, it also meant that the 6th Direction Spiritual Region had lost. Gongye Mingxiu's face was gloomy. As one of the most outstanding disciples of the 6th Direction Spiritual Region, he naturally had some pride in his heart. However, he had lost just like that, and he had lost in such a straightforward manner. What made him feel strange was that all the sword chi and sword chi as well as the illusions had disappeared. Where had the Leng Shiqi gone? At this moment, a voice came from beneath Gongye Mingxiu's feet. Let's consider this my win. Chapter 299. 3 days later, Leng Shiqi finished refining the 9-melody spirit fusion pill given to him by the Pavilion Master. His cultivation had soared to the 5th level of the spiritual pulse realm. As long as his cultivation was high, the power of his spiritual skills would naturally increase. At this moment there was a knock on the door. Master Wuxiang wants to see you. Got it. Leng Shiqi then stretched his muscles and bones. After cultivating for 3 days his body was slightly stiff. After a short while, Leng Shiqi came to Wuxiang's place. When Wuxiang saw Leng Shiqi's 5th level of the spiritual pulse realm, he did not say anything. It was as if everything was within his expectations. Wuxiang waved his hand and sprinkled a green light that enveloped the entire hall. Leng Shiqi felt that this should be some kind of isolation restriction. However, he was a little surprised that Wuxiang Palace had to use such a method in the Blood Garment Pavilion. Then what Wuxiang was going to say next must be of great importance. Wuxiang also put away his unreliable appearance and said solemnly, Leng Shiqi, what I'm going to say next is of great importance. Besides you and me, only the pavilion master knows about this. In this world, I don't want a fourth person to know about this. Leng Shiqi's heart trembled. What was it that even the two pavilion masters, the deputy pavilion master and the disciplinary elder, could not know about it? He said solemnly, I'll keep that in mind. 3 days ago you defeated the Sixth Direction spiritual region in a battle. At the same time, the Blood Garment Pavilion also received the support of the Sixth Direction spiritual region. Then, the next step of the plan can be carried out. That is the Blood Seed Plan after the Blood Fog Island Plan. Blood Seed Plan? Leng Shiqi was confused, but he did not ask any questions. Wuxiang continued, the Blood Seed Plan was originally expected to start in a few years. However, you and Delta Origi have broken through to the spiritual pulse realm one after another and have the ability to protect yourself, so the Blood Seed Plan started in advance. This plan is also an extremely important part of changing the future of the Blood Garment Pavilion. You are the first seed. Do you still remember that I once said that the Blood Garment Pavilion didn't nurture the four of you to be assassins? If it was just this, it would never be able to change the situation of the Blood Garment Pavilion. Take a look at this. At this point, Wuxiang suddenly took out a huge box from his mustard seed bag. That box was more than half a zhang long and half a zhang tall. What is this? Leng Shiqi asked curiously. Wuxiang said, you can open it and take a look. Leng Shiqi opened the box. There was a faint musty smell as if the things inside had been there for a long time. When he opened it, all he saw was a bunch of messy things. This included rattles, strange black rods, children's tattered clothes. There were even a few spiritual artifacts and techniques. Could be said that everything was there. However, these things were all very old. On one side of the box there were several stacks of thick books. Some were old, some were new, and the newest one seemed to have been bound not long ago. Seeing these things, Leng Shiqi was even more confused. What are these? At this moment, Wuxiang's voice sounded, these are all your things. Leng Shiqi said in surprise, what? My things? His mind raced. He suddenly remembered that he had no memory of this body before he was 10 years old. Could these things be related to the original owner of this body? Wuxiang's tone changed again. To be precise, these are the things of the other you. They are also the traces of the other you being alive. The other me? Leng Shiqi seemed to have vaguely grasped something. He seemed to have experienced this scene before. He remembered. Before he entered the illusory spirit secret realm, Feng Shamo had found him and said that he would arrange a new identity for him, which was the identity of Zhuqiu. At that time, Feng Shamo had given him some things to hide his identity, including Zhuqiu's life records. He could not help but think to himself, is Wuxiang or the Blood Garment Pavilion also arranging a new identity for me? From today onwards, you are not only the Blood Garment assassin of the Blood Garment Pavilion, Leng Shiqi. You are no longer just an assassin. You will appear in the world with another identity. We call it birth. Wuxiang's words confirmed Leng Shiqi's thoughts. He thought to himself that it was indeed so. The sect has already prepared a perfect identity for you. No matter who comes to investigate you, they will not reveal any flaws. Now you have a choice. After you birth, it is best to join two forces. It can also be said that you are two completely different branches of the same force. That is, the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. Discipline Commission, Dark Thunder Guards. Leng Shiqi was shocked. Of course he knew these two names. He had even killed Chu Xinran, who was a Dark Thunder Guard. Regardless of whether it was the Discipline Commission or the Dark Thunder Guards, they were directly under the jurisdiction of the Thunderblaze dynasty's royal family. However, they were mainly responsible for different things. The Discipline Commission was like the Thunderblaze dynasty's claws and teeth. It was responsible for handling the conflicts between the dynasty's forces and the spirit cultivator sections. Discipline meant that if they could suppress it, then they would suppress it. If they could not suppress it, then they would appease it. However, the authority of the discipline department differed greatly from province to province. For example, in the Muqin County and Donglin County, where there were top forces, the Discipline Commission existed in name only. This was because they did not have the ability to suppress the Blood Robe Pavilion or the Mountain Sea sect. However, in other counties they might have monstrous authority and power. As for the people of the Discipline Commission, they had never been liked by the people of the leading sections. Even rogue cultivators looked down on them. Their reputation was extremely bad. As for the Dark Thunder Guards, they were the hidden fangs of the Thunderblaze dynasty. The fundamental purpose of the Dark Thunder Guards was to eliminate all people, things, and things that affected the stability of the dynasty. From supervising the royal family, civil and military officials, to eliminating spirit cultivators who caused trouble, they were all under their jurisdiction. For example, Buyuan-ho was secretly investigated by the Dark Thunder Guards and found evidence of him secretly manufacturing weapons, leading to the execution of Buyuan-ho's entire family. For example, the black-veiled woman that Leng Shiqi met in the illusory spirit secret realm was to investigate the 5 devil cultivators who caused trouble. No matter where the Dark Thunder Guards were, they had a lot of power. Even the lowest-level Dark Thunder Guards had the right to act at their own discretion. That meant that they could ignore the laws of the Thunderblaze dynasty and directly act first and report later. Therefore, the Dark Thunder Guards were hated by the people of the dynasty. And now Wuxiang actually asked Leng Shiqi to choose one of them. Leng Shiqi had already vaguely guessed what the Blood Robe Pavilion wanted to do. They were clearly asking him to be a spy. However, the Discipline Commission had become enemies with the spirit cultivators of the world. The Dark Thunder Guards were hated by the various forces of the dynasty. Neither of these were good places to go. If he had to choose between the two, Leng Shiqi hesitated for a moment, but he was still more willing to choose the Dark Thunder Guards. Perhaps it was because he was used to walking in the dark that he would be more proficient in doing things in the dark. Moreover, the Dark Thunder Guards had the right to act at their own discretion, which also gave him some initiative. Thus he said, "Disciple is willing to go to the Dark Thunder Guards." Wuxiang nodded and said, "Yes, I will arrange this matter for you as soon as possible. Take these things back and take a good look. Be sure to memorize every word and sentence." Disciple understands. Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and said. Then he casually opened a page of the book, but there was a name that he would never have dreamed of, Lu Xingji. Chapter 300. 3 days later, Leng Shiqi finished refining the 9-melody spirit fusion pill given to him by the Pavilion Master. His cultivation had soared to the 5th level of the spiritual pulse realm. As long as his cultivation was high, the power of his spiritual skills would naturally increase. At this moment there was a knock on the door. Master Wuxiang wants to see you." "Got it." Leng Shiqi then stretched his muscles and bones. After cultivating for 3 days his body was slightly stiff. After a short while, Leng Shiqi came to Wuxiang's place. When Wuxiang saw Leng Shiqi's 5th level of the spiritual pulse realm, he did not say anything. It was as if everything was within his expectations. Wuxiang waved his hand and sprinkled a green light that enveloped the entire hall. Leng Shiqi felt that this should be some kind of isolation restriction. However, he was a little surprised that Wuxiang Palace had to use such a method in the Blood Garment Pavilion. Then what Wuxiang was going to say next must be of great importance. Wuxiang also put away his unreliable appearance and said solemnly, "Leng Shiqi, what I'm going to say next is of great importance. Besides you and me, only the Pavilion Master knows about this. In this world, I don't want a 4th person to know about this." Leng Shiqi's heart trembled. What was it that even the 2 Pavilion Masters, the Deputy Pavilion Master and the Disciplinary Elder, could not know about it? He said solemnly, "I'll keep that in mind. 3 days ago you defeated the 6th Direction Spiritual Region in a battle. At the same time, the Blood Garment Pavilion also received the support of the 6th Direction Spiritual Region. Then, the next step of the plan can be carried out. That is the Blood Seed Plan after the Blood Fog Island Plan." "Blood Seed Plan?" Leng Shiqi was confused, but he did not ask any questions. Wuxiang continued, "The Blood Seed Plan was originally expected to start in a few years. However, you and Delta Origi have broken through to the spiritual pulse realm one after another and have the ability to protect yourself, so the Blood Seed Plan started in advance. This plan is also an extremely important part of changing the future of the Blood Garment Pavilion. You are the first seed. Do you still remember that I once said that the Blood Garment Pavilion didn't nurture the 4 of you to be assassins? If it was just this, it would never be able to change the situation of the Blood Garment Pavilion. Take a look at this." At this point, Wuxiang suddenly took out a huge box from his mustard seed bag. That box was more than half a zhang long and half a zhang tall. "What is this?" Leng Shiqi asked curiously. Wuxiang said, "You can open it and take a look." Leng Shiqi opened the box. There was a faint musty smell, as if the things inside had been there for a long time. When he opened it, all he saw was a bunch of messy things. This included rattles, strange black rods, children's tattered clothes. There were even a few spiritual artifacts and techniques. Could be said that everything was there. However, these things were all very old. On one side of the box there were several stacks of thick books. Some were old, some were new, and the newest one seemed to have been bound not long ago. Seeing these things, Leng Shiqi was even more confused. What are these? At this time Wuxiang's voice sounded. These are all your things. Leng Shiqi was surprised. What? My things? His mind raced. He suddenly remembered that he had no memory of this body before he was 10 years old. Could these things be related to the original owner of this body? Wuxiang's tone changed again. To be precise, these are the things of the other you. They are also the traces of the other you being alive. The other me? Leng Shiqi seemed to have vaguely grasped something. He seemed to have experienced this scene before. He remembered. Before he entered the illusory spirit's secret realm, Feng Shamo had found him and said that he would arrange a new identity for him, which was the identity of Zhuqiu. At that time, Feng Shamo had given him some things to hide his identity, including Zhuqiu's life records. He could not help but think to himself, is Wu Xiang or the Blood Garment Pavilion also arranging a new identity for me? From today onwards, you are not only the Blood Garment assassin of the Blood Garment Pavilion, Leng Shiqi. You are no longer just an assassin. You will appear in the world with another identity. We call it birth. Wu Xiang's words confirmed Leng Shiqi's thoughts. He thought to himself that it was indeed so. The sect has already prepared a perfect identity for you. No matter who comes to investigate you, they will not reveal any flaws. Now you have a choice. After you birth, it is best to join two forces. It can also be said that you are two completely different branches of the same force. That is, the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. Discipline Commission, Dark Thunder Guards. Leng Shiqi was shocked. Of course he knew these two names. He had even killed Chu Xinran, who was a Dark Thunder Guard. Regardless of whether it was the Discipline Commission or the Dark Thunder Guards, they were directly under the jurisdiction of the Thunderblaze dynasty's royal family. However, they were mainly responsible for different things. The Discipline Commission was like the claws and teeth of the Thunderblaze dynasty. It dealt with the conflicts between the dynasty's forces and the spirit cultivator sections. Discipline meant that if it could be suppressed, then it would be suppressed. If it could not be suppressed, then it would be appeased. However, the authority of the discipline department differed greatly from province to province. For example, in the Muqin County and Donglin County, where there were top forces, the Discipline Commission existed in name only. This was because they did not have the ability to suppress the Blood Robe Pavilion or the Mountain Sea sect. However, in other counties they might have monstrous authority and power. As for the people of the Discipline Commission, they had never been liked by the people of the leading sections. Even rogue cultivators looked down on them. Their reputation was extremely bad. As for the Dark Thunder Guards, they were the hidden fangs of the Thunderblaze dynasty. The fundamental purpose of the Dark Thunder Guards was to eliminate all people, things, and things that affected the stability of the dynasty. From supervising the royal family, civil and military officials, to eliminating the spirit cultivators who caused trouble, they were all under their jurisdiction. For example, Buyuan-ho was secretly investigated by the Dark Thunder Guards and found evidence of him secretly manufacturing weapons, leading to the execution of Buyuan-ho's entire family. For example, the black-veiled woman that Leng Shiqi met in the illusory spirit secret realm was to investigate the 5 devil cultivators who caused trouble. No matter where the Dark Thunder Guards were, they had a lot of power. Even the lowest level Dark Thunder Guards had the right to act at their own discretion. That meant that they could ignore the laws of the Thunderblaze dynasty and directly act first and report later. Therefore, the Dark Thunder Guards were hated by the people of the dynasty. And now Wuxiang actually asked Leng Shiqi to choose one of them. Leng Shiqi had already vaguely guessed what the Blood Robe Pavilion was going to do. They were clearly asking him to be a spy. However, the Discipline Commission was on bad terms with the spirit cultivators of the world. The Dark Thunder Guards were hated by the various forces of the dynasty. Neither of these were good places to go. If he had to choose between the two, Leng Shiqi hesitated for a moment, but he was still more willing to choose the Dark Thunder Guards. Perhaps it was because he was used to walking in the dark that he would be more proficient in doing things in the dark. Moreover, the Dark Thunder Guards had the right to act at their own discretion, which also gave him some initiative. Thus he said, "Disciple is willing to go to the Dark Thunder Guards." Wuxiang nodded and said, "Yes, I will arrange this for you as soon as possible. Take these things back and take a good look. Be sure to memorize every word and sentence." Disciple understands. Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and said. Then he casually opened a page of the book, but there was a name that he would never have dreamed of, Lu Xingji. Chapter 301. At night, Leng Shiqi locked himself in a secret room in his room. He carefully read through everything about Lu Xingji. In this information from the day Lu Xingji was born, it recorded in detail all the people and things he had come in contact with. When Lu Xingji was 12 years old, he was accepted as a disciple by a wandering spirit cultivator and went to travel around. The strange thing was, when Leng Shiqi looked at these things, he actually had a feeling that he had experienced them before. This kind of feeling actually made him shudder. He began to suspect that these things, were they things that this body had experienced before? In other words, this Lu Xingji was actually him. Leng Shiqi formed a guess in his mind. Lu Xingji was a native of this world. Before the age of 12, he grew up happily like an ordinary child. But when he was 12 years old, he was discovered to have a high cultivation talent and was thrown into the Blood Fog Island. Lu Xingji died not long after in the Blood Fog Island and was replaced by another Lu Xingji who came from another world, which was the current Leng Shiqi. The more Leng Shiqi thought about it, the more he felt that this was very likely, and it seemed very reasonable. But Leng Shiqi thought of another illogical existence. If it was really as he guessed, and the information given by Wuxiang was the original experience of this body, then why was there a need to prepare so well? These were originally the memories of Lu Xingji. Why was there a need to prepare detailed information about what happened every day? Moreover, it was impossible for a person to remember everything that happened when they were young. This would make it seem like there were many traces left behind. This made Leng Shiqi's heart beat like a drum, and he was a little unable to confirm his initial speculation. He racked his brains for a long time, but still could not find the most reasonable explanation. In the end, he could only bury all of this in his heart and wait for the opportunity to inquire about it in the future. Next, he continued to absorb the explosive amount of information about Lu Xingji. Even with his strong mental strength, it took him until the fourth day to completely remember Lu Xingji's life. At this time, he also found a loophole in the information. That was, according to the information, Lu Xingji became a disciple of a spirit cultivator when he was 12 years old. That spirit cultivator was called Chu Hejing, a powerful rogue cultivator in the realm of unity of heaven and man. However, Leng Shiqi did not know Chu Hejing at all, let alone being Chu Hejing's disciple. He should have some inheritance, right? He did not have any at all. Another point was that the information in the information was that Lu Xingji's information, which was very much at the age of his age. But since it was perfect information, there must have been some kind of arrangement. Coincidentally, Wuxiang had actually come looking for him at this moment. The strange thing was that Wuxiang had actually appeared directly in his private room. He clasped his hands, clasped his clasped hands, clasped his hands clasped. Disciple, Gren, asked. Shiqi's in, every word has been engraved in disciple's mind. Leng Shiqi said confidently. Very good, master will take you to a place. Shiqi said as he grabbed Leng Shiqi's arm. Leng Shiqi felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, in the next moment, the scenery around him suddenly changed and his eyes spun. When he finally stepped on the ground, he was already in an abnormally dark room. This darkness was nothing to a spirit pulse realm cultivator, and he could see clearly with his spirit energy. He immediately saw that there was an abnormally complex spirit array in the room. At this moment, he and Shiqi were standing in the middle of the array. Shiqi waved his hand and hundreds of sparkling and translucent spirit stones fell precisely into the grooves around the array. Leng Shiqi looked at the abnormally dense spirit stones, and his heart trembled. Every spirit stone was actually a middle-grade spirit stone. Every middle-grade spirit stone's value was more than 100 times that of a normal spirit stone. Wuxiang was throwing money away. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but ask, Master, where are we? Shiqi said proudly, this is an inter-province teleportation formation. There are only a few in the entire Thunderfire dynasty, and our Blood Garment Pavilion has one. Inter-province teleportation formation? Although Leng Shiqi didn't know how far the teleportation formation could go, he knew that they would be going to a very far place. Wuxiang explained, next we'll go to the place where you'll join the Dark Thunder Guards. We'll erase your identity as a member of the Blood Clothing Pavilion. We'll have to choose a place very far away from Yukon County. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi nodded lightly. Soon after, mysterious spirit arrays lit up in the array, and the two of them gradually disappeared. The 6 kingdoms of the western regions were small countries sandwiched between the Thunderfire dynasty and the Starfall dynasty. Among the 6 kingdoms, the largest was only about the size of 2 provinces in the Thunderfire dynasty. The smallest was not even half the size of a province. The reason why the six kingdoms still existed was because they were equivalent to a buffer zone between the Thunderfire dynasty and the Starfall dynasty. No matter which side wanted to send troops, they had to first cross the six kingdoms of the western regions. This way the other side would naturally have enough time to react. The Western Desolation County was the westernmost province of the Thunderfire dynasty. It also bordered the Zhulu Kingdom and the Gaoji Kingdom of the six kingdoms of the western regions. Although the Western Desolation County had the word desolation in its name, it wasn't actually desolate. On the contrary, it was abnormally prosperous. Because the Thunderfire dynasty accepted all kinds of people, they didn't reject the six kingdoms of the western regions and even vigorously promoted all kinds of trade. Therefore, a large number of merchants from the six kingdoms of the western regions could be seen coming and going in the Western Desolation County. It was extraordinarily lively. On this day, two guests came to the capital of the Western Desolation County, Western Desolation City. One of them was a slightly plump middle-aged man. His face was very ordinary, but he had a small mustache and wore a small red round hat on his head. He looked a little funny. But absolutely no one would have thought that this funny-looking man was actually the famous Nether Blood Cloak assassin of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, Wuxia. So the one beside him was naturally Lung Shiqi. But at this moment, Lung Shiqi was showing his original appearance, but also not his original appearance. According to Wuxia, Lung Shiqi's true appearance was too young and didn't match his cultivation. Using external objects to change one's appearance could fool ordinary people, but those true experts would still see through it. At that time, trying to cover it up would only make it more conspicuous. So, Lung Shiqi's current appearance was because he had taken a strange pill similar to hormones, which caused his body to develop ahead of time. He also grew a mustache and looked like a strong man around 30 years old. The two of them had directly crossed several provinces and counties from the Mukan County to the Western Desolation County through the inter-province transportation formation. As it turned out, Wuxia wanted Lung Shiqi to join the Dark Thunder Guards of the Western Desolation County. And the reason why he was able to arrange for Lung Shiqi to join was because he had a close relationship with the inspector of the Dark Thunder Guards of the Western Desolation County. No, to be more precise, Lu Xingji's master, Chu Hejing, had a close relationship with the inspector of the Western Desolation County, Yu Ruifeng. Wuxia was Chu Hejing. Chapter 302. The Western Wilderness City was a city with a large flow of people, and people from the western regions could be seen everywhere. However, there was a very wide but desolate street in the Western Wilderness City. The reason was that the Dark Thunder Mansion was located in this street. This was the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards in the Western Wilderness Prefecture. The Dark Thunder Guards were notorious in the imperial court. Many high officials and nobles avoided them, so this street was deserted. Lung Shiqi followed Wuxia to the gate of the Dark Thunder Mansion. Wuxia handed over a name card, and soon a group of 5 people came out to welcome them. The leader was an old man with sharp eyes. He was not young, but there was still a trace of sharpness in his body. He was the inspector of the Dark Thunder Guards in the Western Wilderness Prefecture, Yu Ruifeng, who had the cultivation of oneness of heaven and men. He was responsible for patrolling the entire Western Wilderness Prefecture, and was a real figure with real power. The 4 people behind him were also in Gang Spirit Realm. They were the inspectors in charge of monitoring the Western Wilderness Prefecture. Yu Ruifeng greeted them with a smile. "Brother Chu, long time no see. Please come in." Wuxia, who was Chu Hejing, said with a smile, "You don't have to be so polite with me. Please come in." Seeing Lung Shiqi, Yu Ruifeng said, "Oh? This little brother must be Brother Chu's disciple Lu Xingji." "Ah, it's my disciple Lu Xingji. Why don't you greet the seniors?" Wuxia said to Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi immediately cupped his hands and said, "Junior Lu Xingji greets Marshal Uncle Yu and seniors." Yu Ruifeng and the others stared at Lung Shiqi for a few seconds, and then he exclaimed, "Nephew, you have the cultivation of middle-stage spiritual pulse realm at such a young age. It's true that a famous teacher produces a brilliant disciple." "Ah." Wuxia laughed and said, "It's not worth mentioning. My disciple still has a lot to learn." Hearing this, Yu Ruifeng's eyes flashed with a trace of shrewdness, and he said with a smile, "Brother Chu, nephew, let's talk in the hall." They chatted and laughed as they walked into the hall. Lung Shiqi followed them silently. Everyone took their seats and chatted for a while. Lung Shiqi found that Yu Ruifeng didn't seem to be pretending to smile at Wuxia, but was really enthusiastic. Wuxiang saw that the small talk was almost over, so he began to talk about the main topic. Brother Yu, I'm ashamed to say this, but I actually have a request for you this time. Yu Ruifeng didn't look surprised. He had already guessed what was going on the moment he saw Leng Shiqi. Brother Chu, what are you talking about? If there's anything you want, just say it. As long as it's within my power, I'll definitely agree. Leng Shiqi was a little surprised. He didn't know what kind of magic potion Yu Ruifeng had fed him, but he agreed without even hearing the request. This matter is related to my good-for-nothing disciple. Wuxiang pointed at Leng Shiqi and said, my disciple's cultivation is barely passable, but he still lacks a lot of training. I came this time to find an opportunity for him to gain experience. He came to find an opportunity to gain experience, but he came to the Dark Thunder Guard. The meaning of Wuxiang's words was very obvious. At this time the eyes of the 4 inspectors flashed. The Dark Thunder Guard was not a place that anyone could enter casually. The Dark Thunder Guard's duty was to monitor the world, so the most basic requirement to enter the Dark Thunder Guard was to have a clean background. Even your 3 generations of ancestors will be thoroughly investigated. Anyone who has the slightest bit of criminal past will not be allowed to enter. It didn't matter how good your talent was or how high your cultivation was. The first requirement of the Dark Thunder Guard was to be completely loyal to the royal family. Wuxiang's request could be said to be easy, but it could also be said to be difficult. The main thing was to see if Lu Xingji's identity was clean enough. If his background was clean, it didn't matter if he did a favor. If there were some traces of his background, it wouldn't be easy to handle. However, what the 4 inspectors didn't expect was that Yu Ruifeng would agree to it so easily. He said, I thought it was something important. Brother Chu came in person for such a small matter? Actually, you only need to send a letter. The 4 inspectors were all shrewd people, but at this time they couldn't help showing traces of shock. In their impression, Yu Ruifeng was an extremely strict person. How could he agree to Chu Hejing's request so easily? Letting Leng Shiqi enter the Dark Thunder Guard without asking or investigating was against the rules of the Dark Thunder Guard. It was also inconsistent with Yu Ruifeng's usual style. What was the relationship between Yu Ruifeng and Chu Hejing? It wasn't just them, even Leng Shiqi thought the same. Wuxiang said, I won't make things difficult for Brother Yu. Brother, you can investigate my disciple's background as you wish. I won't break the rules of the Dark Thunder Guard. Yu Ruifeng said with a smile, let's not talk about this for now. I see that nephew has the cultivation of the middle stage of the Spirit Pulse realm. It's a bit of a waste of talent to just be a Dark Thunder Guard. By the way, do you have any empty inspectors under your rule? The 4 inspectors almost sprained their tongues. They began to wonder if Yu Ruifeng had said something wrong. Inspector? That was a position that only the Spirit Aperture realm had the qualifications to hold. Not only did the cultivation have to be high enough, but they also had to have the corresponding ability and experience. Hearing Yu Ruifeng's words, he wanted Lu Xingji to directly be an inspector? One of them said carefully, Lord Yu, nephew Lu has such a cultivation at such a young age. It's amazing. However, if he becomes an inspector with the cultivation of the Spirit Pulse realm, I'm afraid there will be people who won't accept it. Yu Ruifeng glanced at him and said coldly, Duan Chun, are you questioning my decision? Duan Chun immediately stood up and said, this subordinate doesn't dare. Didn't your North County lose a supervisor not long ago? Why don't you let nephew Lu replace him? Yu Ruifeng's tone was normal this time, but there was an unquestionable meaning in it. This subordinate understands. This subordinate will go prepare the transfer order. Duan Chun said and left. Yu Ruifeng turned to Wuxiang and said, Brother Chu, are you satisfied? Wuxiang said happily, Brother Yu is too serious. It's good enough that my disciple has a chance to gain experience. I'm afraid he won't be able to take up the position of inspector. I see that nephew Lu isn't a fish in a pond. A mere inspector is nothing. Xingji, why aren't you thanking Martial Uncle Yu? Leng Shiqi was just about to stand up when Yu Ruifeng pressed his hand down. A gentle force pressed him back down. Yu Ruifeng said, Brother Chu, you're being too polite. It's not worth mentioning. By the way, tonight we brothers won't go home until we're drunk. Okay, we won't go home until we're drunk. Late at night, Leng Shiqi supported the drunk Wuxiang back to the room Yu Ruifeng arranged for them. As soon as they entered the room, Wuxiang raised his hand and set up an isolation restriction. He didn't look drunk at all. Chapter 303. Leng Shiqi saw that Wu Xiang's expression wasn't good and had many questions. For example, what was the relationship between Wu Xiang and Yu Ruifeng? But he didn't ask. If he could find out, Wu Xiang would naturally tell him. Wu Xiang said calmly, "Originally, with your cultivation, you were the most suitable person to be the Dark Lightning Envoy. Even if you came in through the back door, others wouldn't say anything. But Yu Ruifeng directly arranged for you to be the supervisor. The supervisor is a position with real power. Even normal spirit aperture realm cultivators may not have the qualifications to take up this position. He wants to push you into the teeth of the storm. Once you can't hold this position, you won't be able to stay in the Dark Lightning Guards. This way he has returned my favor and didn't break the rules of the Dark Lightning Guards. His move of retreating in order to advance is really brilliant." At this point, Wu Xiang changed the topic. But he definitely didn't expect you to be able to sit in this position. You also have to sit tight." Leng Shiqi knew that this matter was of great importance. Since he had already chosen the Dark Lightning Guards, he could only follow this path to the end. Even if taking over the supervisor position would bring him endless pressure and trouble, he had to endure it. Disciple understands. Seeing Leng Shiqi's attitude, Wu Xiang nodded his head in satisfaction. Yu Ruifeng will definitely investigate your background and he will even turn it upside down. But you don't have to worry, he won't find anything. Tomorrow you can take the transfer order and take up the position. Master believes in your ability and will of course support you. Take this first. Wu Xiang took out a mustard seed bag and gave it to Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi used his mental power to check it and was immediately stunned. This mustard seed bag was filled with cultivation resources. Just the third transformation spirit pills alone had a total of 30 pills, each of which was worth several hundred spirit stones. In addition, there were 5,000 spirit stones and all kinds of pills that spirit aperture realm cultivators could use. And what made Leng Shiqi the most happy was that there were cultivation methods and spiritual skills inside. The cultivation method was called Amorphous Truth, and was a rank 4 cultivation method. Their spiritual skills were only at the 3rd level, but there were many of them. Sword techniques, saber techniques, finger techniques, leg techniques, staff techniques. This included 18 types of weapons and all types of spiritual techniques. There were even spiritual techniques and illusions. In total, there were over 23rd stage spiritual skills. Leng Shiqi secretly swallowed his saliva. He had never seen so many spiritual techniques in front of him, and all of them were real. He actually felt like he had made a windfall. Wu Xiang said, "Since you're Chu Hejing's disciple, your techniques should have some traces of your master. These are spiritual techniques that I often used when I was young. You can use them as you wish. I also know that your perception is extremely high, and I believe that you will be able to cultivate it very quickly. That is why I am giving it to you now. With these, there is no possibility of your identity being exposed. In addition, it will be difficult for you to secure the position of supervisor by yourself." Wu Xiang took out a blood-red token and said, "Of course, the Blood Cloak Pavilion won't just throw you into the Dark Thunder Guard. Your only mission in the Dark Thunder Guard is to climb up by hook or by crook. The higher you climb, the better. Yu Ruifeng gave you the position of supervisor, which is also a great opportunity for you. You must remember that you are not fighting alone. The Blood Cloak Pavilion is your backing. With this silver-striped Blood Kill token, you can mobilize anyone under the golden-striped Blood Cloak Assassin in the Western Desolate Province. You can also mobilize the entire intelligence network in the Western Desolate Province." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi couldn't help but inwardly take in a cold breath. With this token, he could mobilize any Spirit Aperture Realm Assassin as well as a huge intelligence network. This was a great power. In the Western Desolate Province, his power was probably second only to the head of the pavilion. However, Leng Shiqi also knew that the Blood Cloak Pavilion gave him such great power, and he also had a great responsibility. Although Wu Xiang didn't say what the Blood Seed plan was, Leng Shiqi could guess that the Blood Cloak Pavilion wanted him to climb up to the position of Dark Thunder Guard commander. Not only him, there was also Delta Origi, Yushu, and Xiong Ming. Sooner or later, the 3 of them would be arranged into different forces. With the secret support of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, they could quickly rise up to the top. In the future, the 4 of them would very likely be in charge of a powerful force. At that time, they would have the opportunity to help the Blood Cloak Pavilion break the deadlock and soar to the top. This was the Blood Seed plan. You are a smart person. This is all I have to say. As for where you can climb in the future, it will depend on your own ability. Wu Xiang then removed the isolation restriction and went back to his room to rest. Leng Shiqi also went back to his room. The first thing he did was to use his unlimited skill points to learn all the cultivation methods and spiritual skills. And all of them were cultivated to the great perfection realm. With so many spiritual skills, not only did Leng Shiqi's combat power increase, but it also gave him more possibilities to fuse spiritual skills. Then he began to plan in his mind how he could secure his position as a supervisor. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. Not only Leng Shiqi but in Lanqi City hundreds of miles away, there were also 4 people who could not sleep. They were sitting in a circle with gloomy expressions. The atmosphere was very solemn. They were the Dark Lightning envoys of the West Desolate Province's North County. They were all in the spiritual pulse realm. Among them, the one with the highest cultivation was a gray-haired old man in his 60s or 70s. He was in the 8th level of the spiritual pulse realm. The 2 people sitting on his left and right were in the middle stage of the spiritual pulse realm. Opposite him was an early-stage spiritual pulse realm cultivator. You all know the news from the West Desolate Province's headquarters, right? The old man's voice was a bit harsh. The other 3 nodded in agreement. Every branch of the Dark Thunder Guard had a sound transmission array, which was used to transmit information quickly. Not long ago, they all knew that a new supervisor would be appointed in a few days. The person on the right of the old man said, "Brother Gong Sun Bing, could it be that the headquarters sent the wrong news?" Gong Sun Bing said in annoyance, "How can the news from the great supervisor be fake? Qiu Qing, are you questioning the great supervisor?" Qiu Qing was inexplicably rebuked and did not say anything. The tall and sturdy man opposite him said, "Brother Gong Sun, why did the higher-ups send us a spiritual pulse realm middle-stage supervisor? Even if Lanqi City is very remote, this is too perfunctory. If a spiritual pulse realm cultivator can be a supervisor, Brother Gong Sun, you are the most suitable." Finally, the early-stage spiritual pulse realm cultivator said, "Brother Peng Yuan is right." Gong Sun Bing sighed deeply and said, "I specially paid a high price to use a sound transmission array to contact a good friend in the West Desolate Province's headquarters. Only then did I know that the new supervisor was personally appointed by the patrol inspector Yu. It is said that someone used their connections to send him in. So he went in through the back door." The others immediately showed disdainful expressions. Chapter 304. Most of the people in the Dark Lightning Guards were selected and trained when they were young. Those who were able to stand out from the rest were those who had worked hard for themselves. Take Gong Sun Bing for example. He had been in the Dark Lightning Guards for more than 30 years. He was very senior and had high prestige. He was quite famous around Mist City. But he was still a Dark Lightning envoy and not a supervisor. It was because his cultivation was not high enough. This was the rule of the Dark Lightning Guards, so he had nothing to say. But now, there was someone whose cultivation was lower than his, who had no foundation or qualifications, to be the supervisor, his superior. This made him feel very unconvinced in his heart. Especially since the previous supervisor had died in an accident during a mission and the headquarters hadn't sent a new supervisor yet. The cities around Mist City were all under his jurisdiction. He could be considered to have experienced the power of a supervisor, and even sought a lot of personal benefits from it. But now, he had to hand over all these rights to someone who was far inferior to him. Thus he had other thoughts. Gong Sun Bing looked at the other 3 and said, "Lu Xingji will be taking over in a few days. What do you all plan to do?" "What do we do?" Qiu Qing said, "What else can we do? Just do what we usually do." But when he spoke, his eyes darted around, not daring to look directly at Gong Sun Bing. Gong Sun Bing sneered and said, Qiu Qing, you're right. Then, are you going to keep those resources that you keep for yourself?" Qiu Qing's expression changed instantly. Gong Sun Bing continued, "You want to hide this little trick from my eyes? I'm just taking into account that you're a senior and have worked hard even if you didn't make any contributions. It's fine to take some small advantages. What I'm more curious about is whether the new supervisor will mind it or not." Qiu Qing's expression changed again and again. He immediately put on a smile and said, "Hey, what new supervisor? This little brother will definitely support Brother Gong Sunday." He could tell that Gong Sun Bing didn't seem to want to hand over his power. He wanted to make this new supervisor a mere figurehead. Qiu Qing felt that since Lu Xingji could become the supervisor, this person might not have any ability, but he definitely had a background. He didn't want to offend him. But now that Gong Sun Bing had something on him, it was no longer up to him. One of the duties of the Dark Thunder Guards was to monitor corruption. His actions had also violated a great taboo. If he was exposed, he would be severely punished. He might even lose his cultivation and be expelled from the Dark Thunder Guards. Gong Sun Bing nodded satisfactorily. Among the 4 Dark Lightning envoys, Peng Yuan had always been his follower. As for Qiao Qian, who had just become a Dark Lightning envoy, he had never placed him in his eyes. Qiao Qing was the only one he couldn't control. Now that he had tied him to the same boat, he didn't have any worries. Then he said, "That's good. Let's make arrangements for the next few days and prepare to welcome the new supervisor." 5 days later, there were 70 to 80 people gathered in front of the Dark Thunder Manor. They were all Dark Thunder Guards who were in charge of monitoring the surrounding cities. These people were usually scattered to carry out all kinds of missions. Today they were gathered here to welcome the new supervisor. Not long after, Lung Shiqi arrived in front of the Dark Thunder Manor in Mishchi City wearing a black robe embroidered with thunder patterns. Everyone saw the fire pattern on his shoulder, which was the sign of a supervisor. They knew that he was the new supervisor. Gong Sun Bing led everyone to welcome him and said in unison, "Greetings, supervisor." This was the first time Ling Shiqi saw Gong Sun Bing and the others. He immediately sensed their cultivation. He was quite curious as to how they knew he would enter the city today. Lung Shiqi took out his transfer order and said to Gong Sun Bing, who was standing at the front, "This is the transfer order. You can take a look." Gong Sun Bing smiled and said, "You must be joking. How can the transfer order be fake? Your humble servant Gong Sun Bing greets you." The 3 people behind him also cupped their fists and said, "Your humble servant Qiao Chen, Peng Yuan, Qiao Qian." Even the dozens of Dark Thunder Guards behind him said in unison, "Greetings, supervisor." Lung Shiqi said indifferently, "You don't have to be so polite." Gong Sun Bing saw Lung Shiqi's indifferent appearance and couldn't figure out his temperament. However, this didn't change his plan. He seemed to be relieved and said, "Lan Chi City finally welcomes a supervisor. With a Spirit Aperture Realm expert in charge, many things will be much easier." Gong Sun Bing immediately used Lung Shiqi's cultivation to make an issue out of it. Lung Shiqi's cultivation was at the 5th level of the Spirit Pulse Realm. It was a joke for him to be a supervisor at this level. He specially gathered all the Dark Thunder Guards nearby just to see Ling Shiqi make a fool of himself. In his opinion, Lung Shiqi's cultivation couldn't be faked. The Spirit Pulse Realm was the Spirit Pulse Realm. He had to admit this point. Once Lung Shiqi revealed his cultivation, the Dark Thunder Guards would definitely be in an uproar. As the new supervisor, he would instantly lose all his prestige. Lung Shiqi looked coldly at Gong Sun Bing. He knew that the other party was trying to intimidate him. Normal Dark Thunder Guards didn't know about the supervisor's transfer, but Gong Sun Bing and the other 4 Dark Thunder Guards definitely knew about it in advance. Now that Gong Sun Bing mentioned Lung Shiqi's cultivation, his purpose was obvious. Lung Shiqi only said one word, "Oh." "What oh?" Gong Sun Bing was stunned. What kind of answer was this? In his expectations, Lung Shiqi might fly into a rage in front of everyone, or he might feel ashamed, or he might just remain silent. However, he didn't expect to get an "oh." Lung Shiqi said again, "Won't you let me in?" Gong Sun Bing shivered and hurriedly said, "This humble one has been rude. Sir, this way please." The 5 of them came to the conference hall. As for the others, they dispersed. Lung Shiqi sat on the main seat and said, "You are all Dark Thunder Guards of Mist City's Dark Thunder Manor. You have worked hard and have a lot of experience. I'm new here, so I don't know much about the Dark Lightning Guards in Misty Chi City. Therefore, I'll still need your guidance in the future." When Qiao Qing heard this, he felt that this new supervisor didn't seem like a difficult person to get along with. He thought to himself, maybe he knows that his cultivation isn't high, so he doesn't dare to be overbearing. Among the 4 of them, only the youngest, Qiao Qian, nodded in response to Lung Shiqi. Gong Sun Bing then said, "Sir, what are you saying? We don't dare to give guidance. If you have anything to say, just tell us." "Okay, then is there anything around Mist City that requires my attention recently?" Gong Sun Bing shook his head and said, "Sir, everything has been calm recently. There's nothing that requires your attention." Hearing this, Lung Shiqi sneered in his heart. Chapter 305. Lung Shiqi was not unprepared before coming here and on the way here. Although Lanchi City was located in the north of the West Wilderness Prefecture, it was much more remote compared to the West Wilderness City. However, there were several trade routes that connected to the 6 nations of the West Wilderness near Lanchi City. Therefore, people from various nations came and went in the cities around Lanqi City, making it easy for spies to sneak in and cause trouble. Moreover, it had been more than half a month since the previous supervisor of Lanqi City died in the line of duty. There should be a lot of things piled up in the Dark Thunder Guard. Yet, Gong Sun Bing said that there was nothing for him to deal with? This wasn't just a show of strength but a figurehead. Are you sure there's nothing at all? Leng Shiqi asked again. Gong Sun Bing nodded with certainty. Leng Shiqi looked at the other three and saw that they had the same reaction. Ha, Leng Shiqi laughed, that's good. Looks like I'll have an easy time in the future. It's our duty to share your worries, Lord, Gong Sun Bing said with a meaningful tone. Leng Shiqi said, all right, I'm a little tired from the journey. You guys can leave first. Seeing Leng Shiqi's attitude, Gong Sun Bing secretly smiled and left with the other three. This ending was within Gong Sun Bing's expectations. As a Spirit Pulse Realm supervisor, Leng Shiqi didn't have the strength, experience, or prestige. He really didn't know whether to turn hostile or not. In the end, he could only remain silent. From today onwards, he, Gong Sun Bing, would be the supervisor of the several cities around Lanqi City. After walking out of the conference hall, Peng Yuan immediately said excitedly, Big Brother Gong Sun, from today onwards you're in charge of Lanqi City's Dark Thunder Manor. Gong Sun Bing smiled, you can't say that. After all, we still have to listen to the supervisor. Ah. As for Leng Shiqi, he sat on the main seat with a cold expression on his face, and he sat there for half a day. It wasn't until evening that he went to the supervisor's courtyard and immediately summoned Gong Sun Bing. When Gong Sun Bing received the summons, he was a little confused. He didn't know what Leng Shiqi wanted to do. However, he was full of confidence. Now that the entire Dark Thunder Manor belonged to him, what was there to be afraid of? I would like to see what kind of tricks this Lu Xingji can play. Not long after, Gong Sun Bing walked into Leng Shiqi's study and saw Leng Shiqi playing with a dagger. The dagger flashed with cold light from time to time. Gong Sun Bing smiled inwardly. This supervisor was so idle. He cupped his hands and said, Lord Lu, may I know why you called this lowly one? Leng Shiqi put down the dagger after a few breaths, as if he had just noticed Gong Sun Bing's arrival. He said, Nothing, I just have a small favor to ask of you. Sir, what are your orders? Gong Sun Bing was also very confused. He didn't know what Leng Shiqi was planning. Leng Shiqi picked up a letter on the table and said, This letter, I'll have to trouble you to personally deliver it to Lord Yu. Deliver a letter? Gong Sun Bing was naturally unhappy. Delivering a letter was such a small thing for an experienced Dark Thunder envoy to do? However, he couldn't refuse immediately. Because this letter was for Yu Ruifeng. This was the boss of all the Dark Thunder Guards in the Western Desolate Prefecture. An ordinary Dark Thunder Guard might not even see this supervisor in their lifetime. If he could see Yu Ruifeng and leave a good impression, he would benefit a lot. To be honest, he really wanted to go. However, on second thought, Leng Shiqi was personally appointed by Yu Ruifeng. This meant that their relationship wasn't shallow. Today he had just shown his power to Leng Shiqi, and now he was going to deliver a letter? The reason why he dared to make Leng Shiqi a figurehead was because his cultivation wasn't high, and because the emperor was far away here. The headquarters rarely cared about matters here. The contents of this letter wouldn't be a complaint against him, right? But then again, although Leng Shiqi was made a figurehead by them, he was still a supervisor on the surface. If he were to reject this matter, it would be equivalent to him being accused of disobeying his honor's order. To deliver or not to deliver? Gong Sun Bing hesitated. Leng Shiqi wasn't in a hurry. He played with the dagger again and waited patiently. After a while, Gong Sun Bing nodded and said, Since Sir has given the order, how could I dare to disobey? Being able to see Yu Ruifeng was an opportunity. He didn't want to give it up. This trip to the Western Desolate City, he could also carefully inquire about Leng Shiqi's background. As for the contents of the letter, he could change it however he wanted. There was no shortage of people in the Dark Thunder Guards who could imitate handwriting. Very good. This matter is very urgent. Pack up and set off. Now. Gong Sun Bing was slightly surprised. Leng Shiqi said with a serious face, The sooner the better. Thank you for your hard work. Okay, I will go and prepare. Gong Sun Bing turned and left. But what he didn't know was that Leng Shiqi looked at his back with a murderous look in his eyes. After Gong Sun Bing left Leng Shiqi's room, he didn't rush to set off. Instead, he called Qiu Qing and the others over and told them about the letter. Qiu Qing said, Brother Gong Sun, this Lu Xingji wants to send you away. Gong Sun Bing sneered and said, How can I not see through such a small trick? If I'm not wrong, Lu Xingji will definitely contact you tomorrow. Remember, there is no room for negotiation between us. You should all know what to do. Gong Sun Bing glanced at the three people and finally his eyes fell on Qiu Qing. Qiu Qing immediately said, "Brother Gong Sun, don't worry. Since we are all in the same boat, I know what to do." Gong Sun Bing continued, "I will set off as soon as possible. I will be back in 7 or 8 days. Just pretend that he doesn't exist for the next few days." After that, he quickly left the city with a trusted aide. This trusted aide was someone who was good at imitating other people's handwriting. At the same time, a figure suddenly appeared in Leng Shiqi's room. Leng Shiqi was very calm. He said, "Thousand Face. Western Baron State Branch, black-striped blood-clothed assassin Thousand Face. Greetings, sir." The person who came was a black-striped blood-clothed assassin. Thousand Face was the helper that Leng Shiqi transferred from the Western Baron State Branch. But he was still on a mission and just arrived. Leng Shiqi stood up straight and said, "You came at the right time. Imitate me." Pink ripples of light appeared around Thousand Face, and immediately after an identical Leng Shiqi appeared. Leng Shiqi circled Thousand Face twice and exclaimed, "Wonderful! Even I almost couldn't see through it. There are still flaws. Thousand Face is not good enough. Please forgive me, sir." Leng Shiqi ordered, "This is enough. Tonight you will replace me here. If things go well, I will be back tomorrow morning." Thousand Face obeys. Then Leng Shiqi's body sank into the ground. Tonight he was going to kill someone. Chapter 306. The moonlight tonight was very beautiful. Under the moonlight, 2 horses were galloping on the official road. The 2 people on the horses were Gong Sun Bing and his trusted aide, Hang Su. If a Spirit Pulse Realm cultivator were to run at full speed, their speed would not be slower than a horse. However, galloping for such a long distance was naturally not possible. At this moment, Gong Sun Bing stopped his horse. "Hang Su, let's sleep nearby tonight and rest for a few hours." "Yes, Lord Gong Sun." Hang Su led the horse to the side and began to prepare the things for the camp as if she was familiar with it. For the Dark Thunder Guards, sleeping in the wilderness at night was very normal. They were already used to it. Soon Hang Su set up a simple tent and said, "Lord Gong Sun, you rest first. I'll keep watch." Gong Sun Bing had a lot on his mind and didn't chat with Hang Su. He nodded and sat down in the tent. At this moment he had a faint feeling that something was wrong. Everything was going too smoothly. It was true that he intended to make the new supervisor a figurehead, but in his original plan, this was something that would be done slowly, like peeling silk from a cocoon. However, Leng Shiqi's attitude today was as if he had given up. At first, Gong Sun Bing felt that Leng Shiqi was too young. However, the fact that Leng Shiqi had asked him to deliver the letter showed that Leng Shiqi still had some shrewdness. Thinking about the letter, Gong Sun Bing took out the letter Leng Shiqi gave him from his mustard seed bag. He didn't hesitate to open the letter. There wasn't much content in the letter, so Gong Sun Bing quickly finished reading it. He let out a cold snort. As I expected, it really is a letter of complaint. To use such childish methods, it's really childish. After reading the letter, the worry in Gong Sun Bing's heart dissipated. It turned out that the new supervisor, Lu Xingji, didn't have any real ability. He carefully thought about it for a while and felt that there wouldn't be any problems even if he left for a few days, so he began to cultivate. Hang Su had been patrolling the surroundings. After an unknown period of time, Hang Su suddenly heard a faint sobbing sound in her ears. Even though he was at the spirit transformation realm, his heart trembled when he heard this sound in the middle of the night in the wilderness. He immediately looked around vigilantly, but there was no one in his field of vision. Did I hear wrongly? However, just as he was doubting himself, the sobbing sound appeared again, and it was right next to his ear. Hang Su instantly turned around, but there was still no one behind him. However, the fact that there was no one there made Hang Su turn pale with fright. Because Gong Sun Bing was also gone. Hang Su was dumbfounded. Gong Sun Bing was less than 10 zhang away from him, and there was even a simple tent set up by him. However, at this time, his surroundings were desolate. There was nothing. All he did was turn around. What was going on? At this moment, he suddenly felt an extreme chill, as if the vitality in his body was rapidly disappearing. Hang Su opened his mouth and wanted to cry for help, but unfortunately, he didn't even have the strength to make a sound. Meanwhile, Gong Sun Bing suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at Hang Su, who was standing not far away, and then glanced around, but he didn't find anything abnormal. Ah, that's strange. I clearly sensed a trace of spiritual energy fluctuation just now. How did it disappear all of a sudden? Gong Sun Bing murmured. As a veteran of the Dark Thunder Guards, he wasn't a fool. He was very good at capturing spirit force and sensing danger. Hang Su. Gong Sun Bing called out his name. Lord Gong Sun, what are your orders? Hang Su replied, but his body didn't move. Gong Sun Bing said, nothing. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. It stood to reason that if he called Hang Su would definitely come over. What's more, although it was Hang Su's voice, the direction it came from was a bit off. Just at this moment, a huge wave of spiritual energy appeared beneath him. Immediately, cold air and hot waves of fire intertwined and gushed out from the ground, directly swallowing Gong Sun Bing. A demon-like figure suddenly appeared. It was Lung Shichi, who was wearing the demonic beast blood rune armor. Being affected by this side, Hang Su's body was also shaken to the ground. At this moment he was already dead. To deal with such a spirit transformation realm cultivator, Lung Shichi only used illusions to silently take his life. Although Gong Sun Bing was aware of the danger, he didn't expect that the person who ambushed him was actually a spirit caster. Under the sweeping of the ice and fire tornado, everything within a radius of 20 to 30 feet was destroyed. Some places on the ground were charred black, while others were covered in a layer of ice crystals. Gong Sun Bing's hands were flying around, each palm containing the power of Vajra Mountain, blocking the power of ice and fire. Lung Shichi didn't expect to kill an 8th level Spirit Pulse Realm cultivator in one move. He opened his 10 fingers and 10 bloodlines shot out. Each bloodline condensed blood chi and aimed at Gong Sun Bing's vital points. Gong Sun Bing's expression couldn't help but change. However, what shocked him even more was that the person who was standing in front of him just now had disappeared. But now that he was surrounded by the power of ice and fire, and there were 10 blood-red fingers shooting towards him, he didn't have the spare energy to look for his opponent. Gong Sun Bing suddenly clasped his hands together and a thick golden light appeared. The golden light immediately forced back all the ice and fire power. He slammed his palms down and the golden light condensed into a huge palm that slammed down, directly shattering all the bloodlines. However, Gong Sun Bing wasn't happy at all. He knew that the most dangerous thing had yet to appear. He hurriedly turned around and formed a seal with his hands. Layers of golden light protected his body. However, there was still no one around him. Who is this expert? Are you willing to show yourself? He couldn't help but feel a little anxious. He had to maintain the seal and it consumed a large amount of spirit energy every second. If this dragged on, he would be the one to die first. Since you don't want to meet me, I will take my leave first. Gong Sun Bing decided to leave. This place was very close to Mishchi City. As long as he was near the city, he would be safe. However, he didn't understand who would come to assassinate him. There were very few people who knew that he had left the city. At this moment, a voice answered him, "Have a safe journey." Gong Sun Bing was shocked when he heard these words. He wasn't surprised by the meaning of these words, but because the owner of this voice was actually Lu Xingji. Immediately, a cold blade aura appeared in front of his eyes. It was as if there was only this blade aura in this world. The blade aura flashed and instantly tore apart the golden light around him. After that, he saw a headless corpse. It was his own body. Chapter 307. Early the next morning, a servant knocked on Lung Shichi's door. He was here to deliver breakfast to Lung Shichi. This person kept his head down the moment he entered the room. He planned to leave after placing the breakfast on the table, but before he left, he secretly glanced at Lung Shichi. He thought to himself, I heard that this new supervisor's authority is about to be taken away. Looking at his tired face, he probably didn't sleep at all last night. Just as he was about to leave the room, Lung Shichi's voice was heard, "Stop." That person's body immediately stiffened. He asked in a low voice, "Sir, do you have any other orders? You're also a Dark Thunder Guard?" Lung Shichi's tone was very indifferent. It sounded like he wasn't in a good mood. No, this lowly one's cultivation is low. I'm only qualified to become a Dark Thunder Guard." Lung Shichi saw that he was indeed only at the pure spirit realm. No wonder he was doing the work of a servant. He asked, "What's your name? How long have you been here?" "This lowly one is Wei Guan. I've been in Dark Thunder Manor for 2 years. Wei Guan, you've been here for quite some time. Let me ask you a few questions. Wei Guan was shocked when he heard this. He was young and his cultivation wasn't high, but he had to go through many rounds of selection to become a reserve member of the Dark Thunder Guard. He immediately guessed that Leng Shiqi might ask him about Dark Thunder Manor. Wei Guan lowered his head so low that it almost touched the ground. Sir, this lowly one is only a servant. I don't know much about the manor. Leng Shiqi's tone was clearly a little angry. I haven't even asked and you're already saying you don't know. What, even you don't put this supervisor in your eyes? Wei Guan trembled and knelt on the ground. This lowly one doesn't dare. Even if this new supervisor didn't have any ability and had his authority taken away by Gong Sun Bing and the others, he was still a supervisor. In Misty Chi City he was his immediate superior. Wei Guan was also in a difficult situation. How did he get involved in the fight between the people above? If he didn't answer the Invigilator's question today and was killed, he wouldn't be able to reason with anyone. If he answered and Gong Sun Bing and the others found out about it, he would still be in trouble. Leng Shiqi's eyes flashed as he asked, what's the relationship between Gong Sun Bing, Pang Yuan, Qiu Qing and Xiao Qian? Hearing Leng Shiqi's question, Wei Guan let out a sigh of relief. This wasn't a secret and almost everyone knew about it. He said, Gong Sun Bing is the most senior Dark Thunder envoy in the Dark Thunder Manor in the Misty Chi City. He has been here for about 20 years. Even the previous supervisor isn't as senior as him. Therefore his prestige here was very high. He also had many trusted aides in the Dark Thunder Guards including Pang Yuan, who had been groomed and promoted by him. Pang Yuan's temper was more straightforward, but he was also very straightforward. Qiu Qing could be considered a veteran, but his reputation among the Dark Thunder Guards wasn't very good, mainly because he was a little selfish. He actually disliked Pang Yuan. The two of them would occasionally exchange a few words, but there had never been any conflict between them. As for Xiao Qian, he only became a Dark Thunder envoy after breaking through to the Spirit Pulse realm half a year ago. He's the most junior and usually keeps a low profile. He's kind to people, even to servants like us. Speaking of this, Wei Guan looked up at Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi waved his hand and said, you may leave. Wei Guan immediately wanted to leave as if he had been pardoned, but Leng Shiqi said, tell Pang Yuan and the others to meet me in the meeting hall. Wei Guan's heart tightened. He had just finished talking about the Dark Thunder envoys. Why did Leng Shiqi want to rush them? However, this wasn't something he could worry about, so he immediately nodded and left. After a while, Leng Shiqi sat on the main seat in the meeting hall. His right hand's fingers casually tapped the armrest, making ta-ta sounds. Pang Yuan and the others sitting below had different expressions. Pang Yuan had an impatient expression. Qiu Qing's eyes flashed. Last night, he had guessed that Leng Shiqi would find them today. Now it had come true. However, what he did not understand was that Leng Shiqi had called them here without saying a word. What did this mean? Xiao Qian sat expressionlessly. Just like that, another hour passed. Leng Shiqi was still tapping the armrest. When the sound reached Pang Yuan's ears, it made him even more annoyed. He was not someone who could sit down. At this time he finally could not help but ask. Lord Supervisor, what is the matter with you? If there is nothing else, this lowly subordinate will leave first. Leng Shiqi glanced at him and said coolly, this supervisor hasn't even spoken yet. When is it your turn to speak? Pang Yuan immediately became angry. He stood up, but he suddenly remembered that Gong Sun Bing had said before leaving to pretend Leng Shiqi did not exist. Pang Yuan swallowed back the words in his mouth. Unexpectedly, Leng Shiqi murmured, it's just a dog of Gong Sun Bing. Lu, what did you say? Pang Yuan's anger that he had just suppressed exploded in an instant. He pointed at Leng Shiqi's nose and shouted angrily. When Qiu Qing saw this, he secretly knew that things were bad. He could tell that Leng Shiqi was deliberately targeting Pang Yuan today. Now that Pang Yuan had taken the bait, what would Leng Shiqi do? However, to everyone's surprise, Leng Shiqi laughed. Pang Yuan could not help but be taken aback. His expression became even uglier. What are you laughing at? Leng Shiqi did not answer him. What answered him was a huge devil flame palm. The 6 young poisonous fire palms slammed out. The violent palm wind instantly overturned all the tables and chairs in the room. The raging devil flames spread out waves of heat, making people feel as if they had fallen into a fiery hell. How could Pang Yuan expect Leng Shiqi to suddenly attack him? In a hurry, he only had time to pull out a spirit saber. His saber aura was like a turbulent wave. The The saber aura that appeared suddenly had a terrifying power. However, before he could slash out with his saber, the 6-yang poisonous fire palm had already arrived. Pang Yuan's cultivation was similar to Leng Shiqi's. They were both at the 5th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. However, Leng Shiqi had multiple high-level cultivation methods. His spiritual power was mutated and he had even opened 10 spirit pulses. Just his foundation alone was much stronger than Pang Yuan's. Under this palm, Pang Yuan was directly sent flying. He spat out several mouthfuls of blood in midair and slammed heavily onto the ground. There was a faint devil flame burning on his body and inside, causing his body to spasm. Leng Shiqi did not show mercy. He stretched out 4 fingers and 4 thunder-like finger forces shot out, leaving 4 bloody holes in Pang Yuan's limbs. Pang Yuan's head tilted and he completely fainted. Qiu Qing and Xiao Qian were both stunned. They were even more horrified. Leng Shiqi's instant explosion and crippled Pang Yuan, who was at the 5th level of the Spirit Pulse realm, in 2 moves shocked them greatly. You have no respect for your seniors and offended your superiors. You deserve it. Men, take him away. Chapter 308. As soon as Leng Shiqi finished speaking, 2 dark thunder guards carried Pang Yuan away to be treated. Then Leng Shiqi picked up a chair and sat down as if nothing had happened. Qiu Qing and Xiao Qian couldn't sit still. Leng Shiqi heavily injured Pang Yuan in a thunderous manner. This was a great lesson for Pang Yuan and also a warning to others. Qiu Qing originally thought that Leng Shiqi called them here to persuade them or give them some benefits to appease them. But he never expected Leng Shiqi to be so strong. Not just strong but powerful. Qiu Qing finally understood why the higher-ups sent Leng Shiqi to be the supervisor. The strength he just displayed was comparable to the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm. And he looked to be around 30 years old. This kind of person had a bright future. The Western Desert State Headquarters saw his potential. Qiu Qing vaguely felt that the situation was completely out of their control. And it had only been a day since they took over Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi sat on the chair and continued to knock on the armrest. He looked at Qiu Qing and Xiao Qian but his eyes were emotionless. Qiu Qing didn't know what to do but he knew that as long as he didn't go against Leng Shiqi had no reason to attack him. He had already prepared himself for a torrent of abuse, but Xiao Qian, who was by his side, did something that made him turn pale with fright. Xiao Qian walked forward and knelt on one knee. This lowly Xiao Qian is willing to follow the supervisor to the death. Gong Sun Bing thought highly of himself and looked down on everyone. He even violated the principle of the Dark Thunder Guards and took ill-gotten gains. These are the evidence that I have been collecting. Xiao Qian took out a small booklet and presented it with both hands. Leng Shiqi looked at Xiao Qian with interest. He picked up the booklet but didn't look at it and put it into his mustard seed bag. Since Xiao Qian had evidence of Gong Sun Bing's corruption, it wasn't something that could be collected in a day or two. Most likely, he had been preparing to use his army against Gong Sun Bing a long time ago. If Leng Shiqi was really just an incompetent supervisor, Xiao Qian would naturally stand on Gong Sun Bing's side. However, Leng Shiqi suddenly transferred Gong Sun Bing away last night and heavily injured Pang Yuan today. Clearly he was preparing to seize power. Why did the 4 of them dare to make Leng Shiqi a figurehead? Firstly, he had no foundation and no experience. Secondly, his cultivation was not high. If Gong Sun Bing, who was in the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, could suppress him, how could he be willing to be under Leng Shiqi? But now that Leng Shiqi has shown his strength, things are completely different. Xiao Qian immediately chose a new team and took out the evidence to prove his loyalty. Leng Shiqi said with satisfaction, "Very good, get up." "Yes." Xiao Qian stood up and stood behind Leng Shiqi. Qiu Cheng's mind went blank. Everything was fine yesterday, the 4 of them worked together to make the new supervisor a figurehead. But at night, Gong Sun Bing was transferred away, Pang Yuan was heavily injured, Xiao Qian betrayed them and now he was all alone. His cultivation was only in the 6th stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, not much stronger than Pang Yuan. He knew that he was no match for Leng Shiqi. In terms of status, Leng Shiqi was 1 level higher than him. What should he do now? What could he do? Qiu Qing, Leng Shiqi's voice entered his ears and made him stop thinking. Qiu Qing said, "I'm here. Do you know about what Gong Sun Bing did?" "I don't know." "Okay, you can go back now." "Qiu Qing, go back? You're letting me go just like that?" Qiu Qing couldn't believe his ears. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows and said, "What, you want me to take care of your food?" Qiu Qing immediately bowed and left. Then he wiped the cold sweat off his face. Everything that happened today was too strange. It was completely out of his expectations. He didn't expect anything at all. Pang Yuan's heavy injury, Qiao Qian's betrayal. But he still didn't understand why Leng Shiqi let him go so easily. In the meeting hall, Leng Shiqi said, "Qiao Qian, tell me, why did I let Qiao Qing go?" Qiao Qian thought for a moment and said, "I'm just guessing. First, Qiao Qing has always been careful with his words and actions. It's hard for him to find a chance to act. Second, you want him to contact Gong Sunbing as soon as possible so that he can be convicted of corruption." Leng Shiqi smiled and said, "You're only half right. Qiao Qing still has a trace of hope in his heart, and so does Pang Yuan. Their hope is Gong Sunbing. As long as Gong Sunbing comes back, they still have a chance to turn the tables. What I want to do is let them wait for hope." With that, Leng Shiqi got up and left. Only Qiao Qian was left in deep thought. He was thinking carefully about the meaning of Leng Shiqi's words. Finally, he thought of a possibility. That was, Gong Sunbing might not be able to come back. If his guess was right, then this new supervisor was a little too scary. He couldn't help but be glad that he made the right choice. Qiao Qian shouted, "Men, tidy up this place. Prepare the best things, especially the supervisor's seat. Get him a decent one." Dark Thunder Manor wasn't peaceful today. How could such a big commotion be kept under wraps in the meeting hall? The news of Pang Yuan being crippled by Leng Shiqi in 2 moves quickly spread throughout Dark Thunder Manor. Everyone in this small place was in a state of panic. At night, Pang Yuan could only lie on his bed because his limbs were crippled. 2 servants helped him apply medicine before being chased away by Pang Yuan. Even though Pang Yuan couldn't move his body, he still cursed, "Lu Xingji, Lu Xingji. Let's see if you can still be so arrogant when brother Gong Sun comes back. Is that so? Unfortunately, your brother Gong Sun will probably never come back." A ghostly voice suddenly appeared. Oh! Pang Yuan's eyes widened. He struggled to turn his body. To his horror, a figure had appeared in his room. This person was hidden in the darkness and his face couldn't be seen clearly. However, he recognized one of them from his voice and body shape. Pang Yuan gritted his teeth and said, "Lu Xingji." Immediately after, Pang Yuan only saw 2 5-colored lights suddenly light up in the darkness, and then he lost consciousness. He lost consciousness forever. Leng Shiqi walked to Pang Yuan's corpse and tore off his mustard seed bag to absorb his soul. At this moment, a figure strangely appeared beside Leng Shiqi. He was dressed in a blood-red robe. It was Thousand Face. Leng Shiqi said, "From today onwards you are Pang Yuan." There was a flash of light and another Pang Yuan appeared. Even the wounds on his body were the same. Subordinate Pang Yuan greets the supervisor. Chapter 309. It had been 3 days since Leng Shiqi had seriously injured Pang Yuan. Qiao Qing had felt like a year in these 3 days. Although Leng Shiqi had not come to find him again, this made him even more flustered. He could not guess what Leng Shiqi was going to do to him. At this time, a Dark Thunder Guard confidant walked in and whispered something into his ear. Qiao Qing's expression changed greatly. "It's true." He still found it hard to believe what he had just heard. "Sir, it's true. I wasn't the only one who saw it. Several people passing by saw it with their own eyes. It can't be false." Qiao Qing's expression darkened. Then his eyes turned quickly and he decided to see with his own eyes. Soon he came to the front of Leng Shiqi's room. However, he did not approach and looked from afar. After 2 incense sticks worth of time, Pang Yuan walked out as expected. Qiao Qing's heart sank as he thought, Pang Yuan actually came to find Lu Xingji. What is he thinking? Then he saw Leng Shiqi personally send Pang Yuan out. The two were talking and laughing as though they were very close. Qiao Qing was stunned. 3 days ago, Pang Yuan had been seriously injured by Leng Shiqi. Now that he could get out of bed, he came to find Leng Shiqi. But they were still talking and laughing? Qiao Qing felt that the recent events were too strange. At this time he faintly heard Pang Yuan mention his name. Because he was too far away and did not dare to use his spirit power to avoid being discovered, he could only vaguely hear the words, Qiao Qing, weakness. However, these few words caused Qiao Qing's entire body to turn cold. His entire body turned ice cold. Qiao Qing roared in his heart, Pang Yuan also betrayed me. Not only did he betray Gong Sunbing, he also gave out my weakness. Damn it, idiot. Qiao Qing started to panic. If his weakness fell into the hands of the new supervisor, then he would be at the other's mercy. What do I do? What do I do? Qiao Qing panicked. He could not help but move back and forth, almost scratching his head. "A brother Chiu?" A voice suddenly rang out. Chiu Ching turned his head. When he saw that it was Qiao Qian, he straightened his posture and reined in his expression. Qiao Qian asked curiously, "Brother Chiu, what are you doing here?" Chiu Ching coughed dryly. "Nothing. Brother Chiu is also here to see the supervisor, right? Wasn't that Pang Yuan? Why had he come out of Lord Lu's room? Looks like they're having a good time. Could it be that Pang Yuan has also turned over to the light?" Qiao Qian's words were like a stab to Chiu Cheng's heart. Even someone as scheming as Chiu Cheng couldn't control himself, and his expression turned even uglier. When Qiao Qian saw that Chiu Cheng didn't say anything, he sneered inwardly and walked past him. However, before he left he said, "Brother Chiu, a wise man submits to circumstances. Could it be that Brother Chiu wants to be like Pang Yuan, who only learned to repent after suffering?" Chiu Cheng was really starting to waver, but there was still a sliver of hope in his heart. That hope was Gong Sun Bing. As long as Gong Sun Bing returned, there was still hope. After Leng Shiqi sent Pang Yuan away, he saw Qiao Qian walk over with a smile on his face. When the two entered the room, Leng Shiqi asked, "How was Chiu Cheng's reaction?" Qiao Qian replied, "It was exactly as Milord predicted. He's already panicking and confused, and his heart is starting to waver. Actually, everything that happened today was just a show arranged by Leng Shiqi." Qiao Qian was also the one who told him about Chiu Cheng's personal gains. However, if it was Qiao Qian who said it, it would be far less shocking than if it was Pang Yuan who said it. Qiao Qian continued, "Milord, if you were to rope in Chiu Cheng now, I believe that there's at least a 70% chance of success." Leng Shiqi shook his head. "There's no hurry. Let me ask you something first. Does our Dark Thunder Manor have the right to recruit Dark Thunder Guards?" Qiao Qian didn't react for a moment. This topic had crossed too far. However, he immediately replied, "Yes, but Milord can only recruit 30 people at most. If you want more, you'll have to apply to Great Supervisor Duan Chun." Leng Shiqi nodded thoughtfully and asked, "You should know how many trusted aides Gong Sun Bing has, right?" When Qiao Qian heard this, his heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have guessed what Leng Shiqi wanted to do. Gong Sun Bing has a lot of experience here. A third of the Dark Thunder Guards are his trusted aides. There are so many? Leng Shiqi was shocked, but at the same time he understood. If it were him, he would also choose to make the new supervisor a mere figurehead. Leng Shiqi ordered, "Now you're going to do two things. First, give me a list of all of Gong Sun Bing's trusted aides. Second, gather all of the Dark Thunder Guards and gather at Dark Thunder Manor the day after tomorrow." Qiao Qian took a deep breath. He knew that Leng Shiqi was going to get rid of his dissidents. However, since he was already on Leng Shiqi's side, he could only do as he was told. However, he was secretly very surprised by Leng Shiqi's methods. "Let's not talk about others. Let's talk about Pang Yuan." Qiao Qian couldn't figure out how Leng Shiqi managed to rope him in. Now he felt more and more that his choice was very wise. Time passed in the blink of an eye. After 2 days, all of the Dark Thunder Guards around Mist Chi City except for Gong Sun Bing had gathered. Leng Shiqi faced 70 to 80 Dark Thunder Guards with his hands behind his back. Behind him were Qiao Qian, Chiu Cheng, and Pang Yuan. Pang Yuan was actually a Thousand Faces messenger. These days he rarely saw people with the excuse of recuperating. In fact, he was secretly working with Leng Shiqi to collect information on Pang Yuan's habits and behavior. At this point, as long as he didn't make a move, he wouldn't be exposed. Among the 3 Dark Thunder envoys, only Chiu Cheng was on tenterhooks. It had already been 5 days since Gong Sun Bing went to deliver the letter. According to the distance, he should have already reached West Desolated City and should be on his way back. However, when he secretly used the sound transmission formation to inquire, he was shocked to find that Gong Sun Bing hadn't been to West Desolated City at all. Then where did he go? These days he had been suffering in his heart. He even wanted to take the initiative to find Leng Shiqi and lay his cards on the table. However, Leng Shiqi turned a blind eye to him and treated him as if he didn't exist. Today Leng Shiqi gathered all of the Dark Thunder Guards. He couldn't figure out what kind of medicine Leng Shiqi was selling in his gourd. Leng Shiqi looked at the Dark Thunder Guards and said in a clear voice, "This time I've gathered all of you here for one thing. 2 days ago, I received a secret report that the evil bandit Mo Huaisho appeared in the vicinity of Ai Ming Mountain. This person has stolen countless things. It's our duty to get rid of this person. Unfortunately, this bandit's cultivation isn't weak and he's extremely cunning. Therefore, we need to gather all of our forces to ensure that we can kill this bandit. There's no time to lose. If we delay, there might be more changes. Let's set off now. Chapter 310. Great Bandit Mo Huaisho? Appearing at Ai Ming Mountain? Everyone was confused when they heard this. They had all heard of Great Bandit Mo Huaisho's name. He was indeed a heinous person who deserved to be killed. However, the Dark Lightning Guards had their own intelligence network. How could they not know that Mo Huaisho was at Ai Ming Mountain? Ai Ming Mountain was close to Misty Chi City. If he really showed himself there, the Dark Lightning Guards would definitely know. However, since this matter came from the supervisor's mouth, how could they dare to question it? The one who didn't believe this the most was Chiu Cheng. He was in charge of gathering intelligence and he didn't receive any news about Mo Huaisho. In other words, Leng Shiqi was lying. He purposely gathered everyone together and brought them out of the city. What was he trying to do? Chiu Cheng also faintly sensed a trace of danger. But now that he was alone, he could only silently follow Leng Shiqi out of Misty City and head straight for Ai Ming Mountain. The group of Dark Lightning Guards rushed to Ai Ming Mountain at their fastest speed and went up the mountain to search for traces of Mo Huaisho. Not long after, they encountered a fork in the road. Leng Shiqi said, "Let's split up. Chao Qian and Chiu Cheng go to the left. Pang Yuan and I will bring people to the right." Then, Pang Yuan pointed out more than 20 people. Coincidentally, these people were all Gong Sun Bing's trusted aides. These people also realized this after they stood out, but they didn't suspect anything. This was because Pang Yuan was also Gong Sun Bing's trusted aide. Since Gong Sun Bing wasn't around, Pang Yuan could use these trusted aides. Leng Shiqi instructed, no matter which side meets Mo Huaisho, immediately send out a signal. Don't fight head-on. This subordinate obeys. Then the group split into two. Leng Shiqi and Pang Yuan led 20 to 30 people and walked towards the right mountain path. They walked until the afternoon, but it was still peaceful. Not to mention Great Bandit Mo Huaisho, they didn't even see a shadow. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's body suddenly stopped. Pang Yuan went forward and asked, "Sir, what's wrong?" "There seems to be some movement up ahead, go take a look," Leng Shiqi said. Pang Yuan nodded. Then he turned left and disappeared without a trace. The remaining 20 to 30 people were looking around. Suddenly they saw gorgeous flower petals falling from the sky. Everyone saw different petals, but the petals they saw were the ones they thought were the most beautiful. Unknowingly, they were intoxicated by the beautiful world of flowers. They were completely unaware that Leng Shiqi had already unsheathed his inky jade sword, and a total of 54 demonic patterns were engraved on the blade. Then over 100 invisible channel invading sword chi sprayed out and easily reaped their lives. Not only that, but even their remnant souls were absorbed by Leng Shiqi, becoming nutrients for his spiritual power and physical strength. After doing all this, Pang Yuan also returned. He didn't show any reaction when he saw the corpses all over the ground. This was all part of Leng Shiqi's plan. On the other side, Chao Qian and Chiu Cheng were leading the other Dark Lightning Guards to search for Mo Huaisho. However, Chiu Cheng's mind was not on this at all. He wasn't stupid. He watched as Leng Shiqi and Pang Yuan led Gong Sun Bing's men to the other side. What would they do? Chiu Cheng already had an answer in his heart, but he didn't dare to believe it. Chirp! At this moment, a sharp sound pierced through the air from afar, interrupting his thoughts. Hearing this sound, everyone immediately turned around. Chao Qian shouted, "Mo Huaisho is over there, let's go help the inspectors." When Chao Qian and Chiu Cheng rushed back to the fork in the road, they saw Leng Shiqi and Pang Yuan running over with injuries. Chao Qian hurried over and asked, "Sir, are you all right?" Leng Shiqi sighed deeply and shook his head heavily. "I'm fine, but..." Chao Qian looked behind Leng Shiqi and asked, "Sir, where are our brothers?" Leng Shiqi was instantly heartbroken. He revealed a regretful expression and remained silent. Pang Yuan continued, "Sai, we were about to take down Mo Huaisho, but I was too careless and allowed him to use his strongest trump card. Sir Lu was seriously injured in order to protect me, and the rest of our brothers were all wiped out." Completely wiped out. Everyone revealed a look of disbelief. That was 20 to 30 Dark Lightning Guards. Every one of them was an elite that had been carefully selected. They were all gone just like that? However, these words came from Dark Lightning Envoy Pang Yuan's mouth, and the two of them were indeed injured, so they had no choice but to believe it. Even if they didn't believe it, they wouldn't dare to say it. For example, Qiu Qing. He didn't believe a single word that Pang Yuan said. This was obviously Pang Yuan secretly colluding with Leng Shiqi to eliminate his enemies. However, so what if he knew the truth? If he dared to say it, he would probably die in Mo Huaishou's hands soon. What made him even more fearful was that Leng Shiqi dared to kill even Gong Sunbing's trusted aides. What did that mean? Something might have happened to Gong Sunbing. Gong Sunbing had been gone for a few days and there was no news of him at all. However, Leng Shiqi was stirring up trouble in dark lightning manner, eliminating his enemies without any scruples. He suddenly understood that this time, Leng Shiqi wasn't just eliminating Gong Sunbing's trusted aides, he was also killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Qiu Qing stood up and said, Sir Liu Mo Huaishou killed so many of our brothers. It's a heinous crime. I only regret that I didn't fight side by side with you to kill this evil thief. He even emphasized the words, fight side by side. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi secretly smiled, knowing that everything was done. He patted Qiu Qing's shoulder and said, we will have many chances to kill enemies side by side in the future. Qiu Qing secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He had succeeded in defecting and his life was saved. After everyone returned, Qiu Qing took the initiative to confess that he had sought personal gain. What surprised him was that Leng Shiqi didn't care at all, and even acquiesced to his actions. Qiu Qing realized that he was wrong from the start. He thought that if this was exposed he would be severely punished, which was why he stood on Gong Sunbing's side. In the end, Gong Sunbing didn't care at all, and this made him regret. In Leng Shiqi's eyes, every man for himself. He wasn't afraid of his subordinates being greedy, nor was he afraid of their ambitions. In fact, the more someone was like this, the more he would use them. As long as they held their bottom line and didn't touch his reverse scale, he would turn a blind eye. After sending Qiu Qing away, Leng Shiqi called Xiao Qian and Pang Yuan over. He directly ordered, go prepare to recruit Dark Lightning Guards. This time we will recruit 30. Xiao Qian was delighted. This kind of thing was given to him to do, which showed his trust in him. The recruitment went very smoothly, so smoothly that Xiao Qian was a little self-doubtful. Because in the past few days, there were often people with good cultivation and clean backgrounds who took the initiative to join the Dark Lightning Guards. Originally, he estimated that it would take about 10 days to complete the task, but it was completed in 3 days. At this moment, Leng Shiqi was flipping through the roster of the new Dark Lightning Guards, and nodded with satisfaction. Xiao Qian didn't know, but Pang Yuan did. These 30 Dark Lightning Guards were all black-clothed assassins from the Blood Garment Pavilion. Now, among these Dark Lightning Guards, Thousand-Face disguised as Pang Yuan to monitor Qiu Qing and Xiao Qian. 1/3 of the Dark Lightning Guards were from the Blood Garment Pavilion. Leng Shiqi's position as supervisor was temporarily stable. Chapter 311. On this day, Leng Shiqi sat on the main seat of the supervisor. Xiao Qian had replaced his chair with a chair carved out of jade. It was actually soft when he sat on it, and there was a warm current flowing through his body. Most importantly, the sound of his fingers tapping on it was exceptionally crisp and pleasant to the ears. Leng Shiqi murmured, Xiao Qian is really considerate. Now he finally experienced the treatment of a superior, which also proved that he was temporarily stable in this position. The reason why he said temporarily was because Leng Shiqi knew that there were actually many loopholes in everything he did previously. For example, where did Gong Sunbing and Hang Su go? Were those 20 to 30 people really killed by Mo Huaishou? Mo Huaishou didn't seem to use a sword, and there were many capable people in the Dark Thunder Guards. It was completely possible to determine whether they died by Mo Huaishou's hands from the wounds on the bodies. Even whether Mo Huaishou appeared in the vicinity of Ai Ming Mountain was another matter. These things couldn't be investigated, and as long as someone investigated carefully, they would definitely find a lot of loopholes. But was this important? It wasn't important. The important thing was that Leng Shiqi was now completely in the supervisor's position. As long as he didn't investigate, who would dare to? Taking a step back, whether it was the Dark Thunder Envoys or the Dark Thunder Guards, there were people from the Blood Clothing Pavilion monitoring others. If there were really people secretly investigating these things, Leng Shiqi would know immediately. It was just that these things were more or less a hidden danger. But as time passed, he would be considered to be in the supervisor's seat after he had completely pacified all the Dark Thunder Guards. Leng Shiqi picked up a small stack of files beside him. These were all accumulated in the past few days and were important matters for him to look through as the supervisor. These were basically information on whether there were any problems with a certain person or a certain family, and more than 90% of them were fine. Only a family called the Du family was seriously suspected of colluding with the spies of the 6 nations of the western region. In Lanchi City, many families were intertwined and controlled more than half of the Lanchi City's business economy. There were a total of 9 clans in the entire Mystichi City, and the strongest among them were the Du clan and the Jiang clan. Their clan heads were both at the late stage of the spiritual pulse stage. Leng Shiqi pondered for a while and decided not to touch the Du family for 3 reasons. Firstly, he still needed to nurture and stabilize his team. He still needed some time to slowly infiltrate them. Secondly, after all, the Dark Thunder Guards did not have conclusive evidence in their hands. They were just suspicious. Thirdly, he also intended to go into seclusion for a period of time. Before coming to Misty City, Wuxiang had given him 20 to 30 rank 3 spiritual skills, but he had been thinking of ways to get rid of his dissidents recently and hadn't had the time to try fusing them. Of course, before he went into seclusion he had something very important to do. After that, Leng Shiqi came to a heavily guarded place in the Dark Thunder Manor, the Treasury. The treasury contained all of Dark Thunder Manor's cultivation resources and resources accumulated over a long period of time. In the past, this place was personally managed by Gong Sun Bing. After he left, he gave the key to Pang Yuan, and now it was in Leng Shiqi's hands. Sir Invigilator. The 8 Dark Thunder Guards in charge of guarding the treasury knelt on the ground and shouted respectfully. Leng Shiqi nodded and opened the door to the treasury. The treasury wasn't very big, only about 10 feet in radius, but there were many things inside. Leng Shiqi could imagine all kinds of cultivation resources. What surprised him the most was that it even included cultivation methods and spiritual skills. Although the highest level was only rank 3, there were still many of them. There were as many as 13 of them. In addition to what Wuxiang gave him, it was equivalent to him having more than 30 spiritual skills. This made him even more determined to go into seclusion for a period of time. Without hesitation he prepared to use his unlimited skill points to learn them. However, when he opened the system, he realized that there was something he was more interested in today's refreshed system store. Rank 2 Index Card, 200 System Coins. Leng Shiqi had used an index card before. This was something that could narrow down the range of the lottery. However, he had only used a rank 1 index card on Blood Mist Island. Now that a rank 2 index card had appeared in the system store, he wanted to buy it and try it out. However, when he saw that his system coins were a big 0, he smiled bitterly. After he came out of the illusory spirit secret realm, he bought a reforge card to reforge the current Inky Jade Sword. Then, he went through an unlimited lottery of 1,000 system coins and swallowed all of his system coins. Later, he went to save 9 leave and killed 3 disciples of the Extreme Fire Manor. He also killed 3 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators in the Southern God Peak and seized a lot of resources. However, those resources were all exchanged for spirit stones and then used to buy materials to help 9 leave repair his body. 9 Leave's body had long been destroyed under the siege of the experts of the Extreme Fire Manor. Even though Leng Shiqi had paid such a huge price, he had only recovered about 70% to 80%. Speaking of 9 Leave, Leng Shiqi remembered that 9 Leave had been asleep for almost 4 months, but there were still no signs of him waking up. Next, Leng Shiqi took some materials and sold them to the system. In exchange for 200 system coins, he bought a rank 2 index card from the system store. After that, he also filled his pockets with 10 rank 3 spirit pills. Each pill was worth hundreds of spirit stones. Ordinary spirit pulse realm cultivators would need a long time to consume them. On Leng Shiqi's body, including the 30 pills that Wuxiang gave him, he already had 40 pills. Leng Shiqi estimated that these rank 3 spirit pills would be enough for him to use until he reached the late stage of the spirit pulse realm. After taking 10 rank 3 spirit pills and some materials, Leng Shiqi did not take any more. As a supervisor, it was fine for him to fill his pockets with things. However, the resources here had to be distributed to his subordinates on time. If he used it recklessly, he might not even be able to pay his subordinates a month's salary. Thus, Leng Shiqi returned to his room and called Xiao Qian, Qiu Qing and Pang Yuan over. After the 3 of them arrived, Leng Shiqi said, "I called you guys over to talk about something. After this, I will be in closed-door cultivation for a while." Closed-door cultivation? Qiu Qing and the others were stunned. Leng Shiqi had just stabilized his position as a supervisor and was about to go into closed-door cultivation. Was he not afraid of something happening? However, they did not say anything. Lung Shiqi ordered, "The affairs of Dark Thunder Manor will be handled by the three of you. Qiu Qing, you were originally in charge of intelligence. You will still be in charge. Xiao Qian will be in charge of the affairs of the Dark Thunder Guards. Peng Yuan will be in charge of the handover of missions. I won't be in seclusion for long this time, and it won't be a life-or-death seclusion. If there's anything important, you can come and find me." The three of them said in unison, "This subordinate obeys." For Qiu Qing, he was already very happy to be in charge of intelligence. He originally thought that Lung Shiqi would suppress him for a while. For Xiao Qian, this was a secret promotion. Originally, he did not have much of a presence among the Dark Thunder envoys and did not have any real power. Now he was in charge of the Dark Thunder Guards. On a smaller scale, he had to deal with the conflicts between them and give out monthly salaries. However, on a larger scale, this included the mobilization of the Dark Thunder Guards. This was not a small power. Missions were the foundation of the Dark Thunder Guards. Giving them to Peng Yuan in disguise, Lung Shiqi could go into closed-door cultivation in peace. Chapter 312. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. In the room, Lung Shiqi was cultivating with his eyes closed. His body was surrounded by a faint gray mist and five-colored flowing light. His aura was deeper and more stable. His cultivation was already at the 6th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. When he was at the Blood Clothing Pavilion, he had won the Pavilion Master Hateful Blade and was rewarded with the 9 Melody Spirit Fusion Pill. With the help of this pill, his cultivation had skyrocketed to the 5th level of the Spirit Vein realm and was close to the 6th level. Over the past half a month, with the help of several powerful and profound cultivation methods, his cultivation speed had increased by leaps and bounds. The key was that with these techniques, he could almost completely refine the 3rd turn Spirit Melting Pill without leaving any medicinal dregs in his body. Therefore, he refined a 3rd turn Spirit Melting Pill every other day and finally broke through to the 6th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. But at this moment, there was an urgent knock on the door. Before Lung Shiqi went into seclusion, he said that unless there was an emergency, he was not to be disturbed. But now that someone was interrupting his seclusion, it meant that there was something that Peng Yuan and the other two couldn't solve. Lung Shiqi slowly stopped and opened his eyes. The strange thing was that his eyes were very turbid and looked a little sluggish. This was Lung Shiqi using the soul-splitting technique to separate half of his consciousness and immerse himself in the spirit illusion realm. However, that part of his consciousness wasn't refining mental power in the spirit illusion realm, but deducing spiritual techniques. In the past, if he wanted to fuse spiritual techniques, he had to continuously use them. But this way he couldn't cultivate anymore. Moreover, he was now in the Dark Thunder Manor and there were many eyes. Even if he ordered people not to come close, it was inevitable that some of his information would be exposed. So he had a flash of inspiration and thought of using the soul-splitting technique to separate a part of his consciousness and deduce spiritual techniques in the spirit illusion realm. There were many benefits to this. First, he could cultivate spiritual power while deducing spiritual techniques. Also, he could avoid being spied on by others. Most importantly, if he was outside, he would have to stop to recover his spiritual power after a round of spiritual techniques. But in the spirit illusion realm, with the support of the Heaven Fei Soul Crystal, he could almost continuously use spiritual techniques and fuse them. This saved him a lot of time. Furthermore, the process of fusing his spiritual skills was very smooth. In just half a month he had fused 2 new unique skills. Furthermore, he had integrated the Violent Lion's Raging Forest Fist into the Ferocious Tiger's Wave-Treading Fist. Could be said that he had gained a lot. Unfortunately, he had urgent matters to attend to, so he had no choice but to stop. Lung Shiqi used the soul separation technique and withdrew the other part of his consciousness from the spiritual illusion world. His eyes gradually became clear. Then he stretched his body and opened the door. What surprised him was that Xiao Qian, Peng Yuan, and Qiu Qing were all standing at the door with anxious expressions on their faces. What could make the 3 Dark Lightning emissaries so anxious? When the 3 of them saw Lung Shiqi, they were also stunned. As Lung Shiqi had just finished cultivating, his aura had not been completely concealed. They could immediately sense that Lung Shiqi's aura was clearly at the 6th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. He only went into seclusion for half a month and broke through to the 6th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. Qiu Qing was the most shocked because his cultivation was also at the 6th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. He clearly remembered that it took him 2 to 3 years to cultivate from the 5th level to the 6th level. Of course, he also knew that his cultivation talent was average, but Lung Shiqi's breakthrough speed was too shocking. On the other hand, Qiao Qian's reaction was not as exaggerated as Qiu Cheng's. He was only at the first level of the spirit pulse realm and had not experienced the hardships of cultivation. As for Peng Yuan, he was only slightly surprised. In his opinion, someone who could possess the silver-patterned blood kill token was definitely a giant among men. However, he still pretended to be shocked. Leng Shiqi did not think much of it. He said indifferently, "What's the hurry? Come in and talk." Qiu Cheng and the other two finally reacted and sat down. Qiu Cheng said anxiously, "Sir, actually, there's a secret in our Miss Qi City's Dark Lightning Manor that you might not know about." "Let's hear it." Leng Shiqi looked at Qiu Cheng with interest. Qiu Cheng's face appeared to be in a difficult position. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Sir, you should know that although Miss Qi City is not big, it is still relatively wealthy because of the existence of the trade routes." Leng Shiqi naturally knew about this. Although Miss Qi City was far from Western Desolated City, there were still many foreign merchants coming and going. It was considered a relatively prosperous city. Qiu Cheng continued, "Because there are many merchants from the 6 kingdoms of the western regions, some people have other ideas. For example, secretly moving some things that are prohibited by the Thunderfire dynasty." Hearing this, a word appeared in Leng Shiqi's mind. Smuggling. Leng Shiqi's eyes moved slightly. Smuggling was a business with huge profits, but this kind of thing was under the jurisdiction of the Dark Lightning Guards. He looked at Qiu Cheng's troubled expression and felt that there was more to it than met the eye. In Miss Qi City, there are 9 long-established families that are doing this kind of business. At this point, Qiu Cheng couldn't help but glance at Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi's expression didn't look so good. He asked, "You mean to say that the Dark Lightning Guards know that these 9 families are smuggling, but do nothing about it?" Qiu Cheng hurriedly explained, "Sir, please listen to this subordinate's explanation. Actually, this matter was tacitly approved by the previous supervisor, Sir Shayu." Leng Shiqi's brows furrowed slightly. Was this related to the previous supervisor? Seeing that Leng Shiqi didn't continue to question him, Qiu Cheng continued, "Sir, you're new here, so you might not know that the monthly salary of the Dark Lightning Guards isn't high. Although the rewards for carrying out missions are quite high, no matter what the mission is, it's more complicated and full of danger. The previous supervisor, Sir Shayu, treated us extremely well, but the Dark Lightning Manor's own wealth couldn't support it. Thus, Sir Shayu thought of a way which is to tacitly approve of the 9 families smuggling, but they have to hand over a tribute every month." Leng Shiqi finally understood. He felt that Shayu was quite daring. There were many people who could think of such a method, but there weren't many who dared to violate the Dark Lightning Guard's duties and do such a thing. Leng Shiqi then asked, "You've said so much. What exactly happened?" Qiu Cheng said, "Sir, we agreed with the 9 families to hand over the tribute at the beginning of every month. But today, the tribute that the 9 families handed over was actually less than half of what they usually hand over." Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes. He knew why. It was because the 9 families felt that a mid-stage Spirit Pulse Realm supervisor like him wasn't much of a threat to them. Unknowingly, 2 cold rays of light shot out from his eyes. Chapter 313. Seeing Leng Shiqi's expression, Qiu Cheng shut his mouth. Although he hadn't spent much time with Leng Shiqi, he knew that Leng Shiqi was definitely a ruthless person. 20 or 30 Dark Thunder Guards that had been painstakingly trained were killed just like that. And it had been more than 20 days since Gong Sun Bing had left, and there was still no news of him. Qiu Cheng had already guessed what happened to Gong Sun Bing, so he had specifically written that Gong Sun Bing was missing in the report. Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment, then said, "Send someone to send the invitations to the 9 great clans. I will invite the patriarchs of the 9 great clans to a banquet at noon tomorrow." Qiu Cheng and Xiao Qian glanced at each other. Both of them had bitter expressions on their faces. Leng Shiqi also knew what they were thinking. Since the 9 great clans hadn't truthfully handed over their tributes, it was obvious that they had already colluded in secret. If he went to invite the patriarchs of the 9 great clans now, they definitely wouldn't come. At that time, Leng Shiqi would probably lose all face. Leng Shiqi waved his hand and said, "Do as I say. I have my ways. Peng Yuan, stay. Your humble subordinates will do it right away." Qiu Cheng and Xiao Qian cupped their hands and left. Leng Shiqi asked Peng Yuan, "Thousand Face, nothing out of the ordinary in the past half month, right?" Thousand Face said, "Everything is normal, and the black-clothed assassins have completely integrated into the Dark Thunder Guards. Very good. Lung Shiqi nodded. Next, I'll have to trouble you to help me find information on the 9 great clans. The more detailed, the better. Yes. At noon, Wei Guan brought Lung Shiqi's invitation to the Jiang clan. The Jiang clan was one of the top clans of the 9 great clans. He handed over the invitation, and the guard at the door immediately went in to deliver the message. Wei Guan was about to leave when he saw a drunk young man walk over with the help of 2 servants. Wei Guan recognized this person. He was the son of the Jiang clan's first wife, Jiang Xan. Jiang Xan also recognized the clothes of the Dark Thunder Guards. Although Wei Guan was only a reserve member of the Dark Thunder Guards, the style of their clothes were more or less the same. Jiang Xan stepped forward and asked inarticulately, "Why did the Dark Thunder Guards come to our Jiang family?" When Wei Guan turned around, he smelled the pungent stench of alcohol. He resisted the smell and said, "I'm here to deliver the invitation under the orders of the supervisor." Invitation? What invitation? Wei Guan hesitated for a moment. He thought that since Jiang Xian was a disciple of the Jiang clan, he would definitely know about this matter. Thus, he said, "It was Supervisor Lu who invited the Jiang clan head to the Drunken Fragrance Pavilion for a gathering at noon tomorrow." Jiang Xan laughed coldly. "Lord Lu, is that Lu Xingji of the middle stage of the Spirit Pulse stage? Ah, what a joke. A middle stage Spirit Pulse realm cultivator can become a supervisor. It seems like the Dark Lightning Guard has no one. You even invited my father? Do you really think you're something?" Wei Guan's face immediately flushed red. He pointed at Jiang Xan, but didn't dare to say anything. Jiang Xan became even more intoxicated. His face was ferocious. "You, a descendant of the Dark Thunder Guards, dare to point at this young master. You must be tired of living." Jiang Xan kicked out as he spoke. Although he was drunk, his cultivation was indeed at the spirit transformation stage. However, Wei Guan was only at the pure spirit stage. Furthermore, Jiang Xan had suddenly attacked, so how could he avoid it? He was directly sent flying by Jiang Xan's kick and fell to the ground far away. Wei Guan's skin was bruised and his face was swollen. His clothes were also tattered and he had suffered some internal injuries. He stared coldly at Jiang Xan, but he knew that he wasn't Jiang Xan's match. He could only leave without a word. Now that the relationship between the Dark Thunder Guards and the 9 great clans was very stiff, he couldn't cause more trouble. Jiang Xan, however, stood there and laughed loudly. This commotion was neither big nor small, and there were many people around watching. This matter quickly spread to the Jiang Fu. Just as Jiang Xan walked through the main door, he saw his father, the head of the Jiang clan, Jiang Hao, walking over quickly with a calm face. Jiang Hao shouted, "You hit someone from the Dark Thunder Guards." Jiang Xan nodded indifferently and said, "That's right, that Lu Xingji doesn't know what's good for him. He dares to be a supervisor at the intermediate stage of the Spirit Pulse stage. I also heard that he invited the 9 great clans to a banquet. It must be for the sake of the offerings. Tsk, when Xiaoyu was around it was fine that he sucked our blood, but now we have given Lu Xingji enough face. It's not like we don't want to give him offerings. What else does he want?" Jiang Hao said with some disappointment, you ah, how many times have I told you to drink less? Drinking makes things worse. You have a bad temper and after drinking a little wine, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. No matter how weak that Lu Xingji is, he is still a supervisor. He also has something on us. If we really push him too far, everyone will fight to the death and no one will have an easy time. The reason why the 9 great clans joined forces to deliberately give him 1/3 of the offerings is to test his actual situation and reaction, and to understand his temperament. This matter was originally a secret struggle, but you actually beat up the Dark Thunder Guards. This gave them a chance to talk and our Jiang clan is now in a passive position. At this time Jiang Xan also felt that he was a little impulsive, but he still didn't care. He asked, "Then father, are you going to the banquet tomorrow?" Of course not." Jiang Hao snorted coldly. "Then that's it. You guys not going to the banquet will make him lose face. It's the same for me beating up his men. It's a good opportunity to force him." Jiang Hao's expression stiffened. "You sigh, forget it. Hurry and help the young master back to rest." All right, I can walk by myself." At noon the next day, Lung Shiqi arrived at Drunken Fragrance restaurant accompanied by 3 Dark Thunder envoys. This restaurant was considered one of the more famous ones in Mishqi City, but it was reserved by the Dark Thunder Manor today. Lung Shiqi sat in a huge private room, leisurely drinking tea. Other than the four of them, there was no one else in the private room. It was already past the time stated on the invitation. Qiao Qian and Pang Yuan stood on either side of Leng Shiqi with sullen faces. Qiu Qing stood at the door and looked around from time to time. He hadn't seen anyone from the 9 great clans yet. It was just as he had expected. But he was also very puzzled. If he could predict this situation, Leng Shiqi naturally could too. But why did Leng Shiqi still do this even though he knew it would end up like this? Wasn't this just making him lose face? Leng Shiqi finished his tea and shouted, "Serve the dishes." Soon dishes were served one after another. Leng Shiqi ate heartily. Seeing that the other 3 weren't moving their chopsticks, he said, "Don't just stand there. Hurry up and eat. It's not cheap to reserve Drunken Fragrance restaurant, we can't waste it." Qiu Qing and the other 2 could only eat as well. But this delicious food tasted like wax in their mouths. Especially Qiu Qing and Xiao Qian. They simply couldn't understand what Leng Shiqi was planning. Only Pang Yuan could vaguely guess, but he couldn't be sure. Burp. After a while, Leng Shiqi burped in satisfaction. He patted his bulging belly and muttered in a voice only he could hear, "How can I kill if I don't eat my fill?" Chapter 314. The news that the new supervisor of Dark Thunder Manor had invited the 9 great clans to a banquet at Drunken Fragrance Brothel, but no one showed up spread quickly. The entire Misty Chi city was abuzz with the news. At night in the Jiang residence, Jiang Xen pushed open the door to Jiang Hao's study and said cheerfully, "Father, how is it? I told you that Lu Xingji doesn't know his place." None of the 9 great clans showed up. Haha, his reputation as a supervisor has been completely destroyed. Who knew that Jiang Hao didn't look happy at all? Jiang Xian's laughter froze. "Father, aren't you happy?" Jiang Hao's eyes narrowed. "Do you know why we didn't show up?" Jiang Xan was slightly taken aback. Isn't it to make him lose face and let him know that the 9 great clans aren't to be trifled with? In the future we can just symbolically hand over a little tribute. Jiang Hao said, "You wish. Lu Xingji can take the position of a supervisor at such a young age. Do you think he's that simple? Let's not talk about other things first. Those Dark Thunder Guards won't listen to him if he can become a supervisor with just the Spirit Pulse Realm cultivation. But from what I know, the Dark Thunder Manor is clearly under his rule now. This means that he either has a strong background or has many tricks up his sleeve. We didn't show up this time because we wanted to see his reaction. Do you know what he did in the restaurant?" Jiang Xen said, "What else can he do? He must have flipped the table in anger." If it were you, you would definitely do something like that." Jiang Hao reprimanded him. Lu Xingji knew that no one was going to show up, but he actually ate and drank in the restaurant. He didn't seem angry at all. This means that he had already expected such a scene. It also shows that he's very scheming. Jiang Xian also stopped joking. Leng Shiqi's reaction was indeed beyond his expectations. Jiang Hao sighed softly. This Lu Xingji isn't easy to deal with. Xen, don't go out casually during this period of time." "But father, enough. Go back." After Jiang Xan left, Jiang Hao fell into deep thought again. Not only the Jiang family, but the masters and higher-ups of the 9 great families of Mist City were also aware of today's situation. They were all secretly guessing Leng Shiqi's intentions. The Wang clan was a small clan ranked at the bottom of the 9 great clans. The head of the Wang clan, Wang Qingze, was only at the 5th level of the spiritual pulse realm. In the 9 super clans they could only drink the leftovers of others. At this moment Wang Qingze was feeling sorry for himself. Originally he didn't want to provoke the Dark Thunder Guards, but it was the Du family and the Jiang family who jointly led the reduction of their offerings. Furthermore, this matter had already tied the 9 super clans together. Although he was extremely unwilling, he had no choice but to agree. Today was the new supervisor's banquet, so he couldn't go even if he wanted to. At this moment, Wang Qingze was pacing back and forth in his room. He still couldn't feel at ease. His Wang clan wasn't as powerful as the Du clan and the Jiang clan, nor did he have their heritage. What if the Dark Thunder Guards caused trouble for the Wang family? What should he do? However, just when he was on tenterhooks, he suddenly heard a voice. It sounded like the sound of a long sword being unsheathed. But before he could react, he lost consciousness forever. Behind him, a person in demonic armor had appeared out of nowhere. He was holding a spirit sword with a green gem embedded in his hand. The blade of the spirit sword was also covered with demonic patterns. This person was naturally Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi used Byakugan and Hand of Earth to easily sneak into Wang Qingze's room and found that Wang Qingze was still in a daze. However, Lung Shiqi still didn't dare to underestimate the enemy. He immediately activated the demonic beast blood pattern armor and demonic patterns and killed Wang Qingze with one strike. Then he picked up Wang Qingze's mustard seed bag, but left quietly without dealing with his corpse. It wasn't until early the next morning that the servant in charge of serving Wang Qingze was shocked to find that his master had been assassinated in his own room. The entire Wang clan was in an uproar. Soon, the elders and stewards of the Wang clan all rushed over in panic. When they saw Wang Qingze's cold body, they all felt dizzy. Wang Qingze was not only their patriarch, but also the strongest person in the Wang clan. Other than Wang Qingze, there was only one elder in the initial stage of the Spirit Pulse realm. However, this elder was close to 100 years old. His blood had long declined and was unable to support the Wang clan. In other words, the pillar of the Wang clan had fallen. What was even more frightening was that Wang Qingze actually died silently just like that. Several elders of the Wang clan examined Wang Qingze's death and could see that he had been killed with one strike. Who could kill a Spirit Pulse middle stage spirit cultivator without batting an eyelid? Unless it was a Spirit Aperture realm expert. However, their Wang clan was only a small clan. How could they be targeted by a Spirit Aperture realm expert? The only Spirit Pulse realm elder in the Wang clan asked, "Did the patriarch offend anyone powerful?" The other elders of the Wang clan all revealed doubtful expressions and shook their heads. However, one of them suddenly said, "Elder, you have been recuperating these days. There is something that you might not know. A few days ago, the Du clan and the Jiang clan took the lead and asked the 9 great clans to reduce the tribute to the Dark Thunder Guards. Do you think it has something to do with this?" Crazy. The elder was immediately enraged. "Are you crazy? You even dare to offend the Dark Thunder Guards. Elder, you might not know, but the Dark Thunder Guard supervisor is no longer Xiaoyu. It is a Spirit Pulse Realm middle stage cultivator called Lu Xingji." Spirit Pulse Realm middle stage? The elder was in disbelief. That's right. That Lu Xingji even hosted a banquet at the Intoxicated Fragrance Pavilion yesterday. He wanted to invite the 9 great clans over for a chat, but no one went. He really has no dignity as a supervisor. What did you say? Stupid, really stupid. The clan elder connected the two things together and said, "We put him in such a difficult position and he just tolerated it? No matter what, he is still a supervisor, someone with real power. His cultivation isn't high, but it also means that his background isn't weak. Perhaps the assassination of the patriarch was done by him. But there is no Spirit Aperture realm expert in the entire Dark Thunder Manor." Just as they were in a state of panic, another person hurriedly ran in from outside. He was holding an envelope in his hand and was panting as he yelled, Brother, I'm sorry. Elder, it's not good. The Dark Thunder Guards are here to deliver a letter." What? Deliver a letter? Everyone was shocked. They were just guessing whether the patriarch's death was related to the Dark Thunder Guards. Now they had sent a letter? The elder opened the envelope and saw that it was an invitation card. It invited the 9 great clans to gather at the Intoxicated Fragrance Pavilion at noon. Chapter 315. The clan elder's hand trembled and the letter fell to the ground. Everyone saw the contents of the letter and a shadow fell over the entire Wang clan. The news of the Wang clan head Wang Qingze being killed quickly spread. Strangely, the news wasn't spread by the Wang clan. Instead, the entire street was talking about it early in the morning. This matter naturally fell into the ears of the other 8 clans. Yesterday they humiliated the Lung Shiqi and Wang Qingze died at night. If someone said there was no connection between the two, they wouldn't believe it. But they couldn't figure it out. There were no Spirit Aperture realm experts in the Dark Thunder House. Then who could assassinate Wang Qingze silently? Jiang clan. Jiang Hao and Jiang Xn were eating breakfast when they received the news. Jiang Hao immediately lost his appetite. Jiang Xn said, "Wang Qingze might have offended someone he shouldn't have. So what if he's dead? We can still take some of the Wang clan's business." Jiang Hao slammed the table and said angrily, "Short-sighted. Can't you see that this has something to do with the Dark Thunder Guards and Lu Xingji?" Jiang Xn muttered, "What could it have to do with you?" Jiang Xn wanted to teach him a lesson. At this time, a servant ran over with a letter. "Master, young master, this is the letter from the Dark Thunder Guards." Jiang Hao's heart tightened. He opened the letter. The contents were exactly the same as the one from the day before. He muttered, "It's him. It must be him. He's starting to fight back. Go invite the Du clan head over." "Wait, I'll go personally." Jiang Hao rushed to the Du clan as fast as he could and met with the Du clan head, Du Hachang. Jiang Hao said anxiously, "Brother Du, you also received the Dark Thunder Guard's invitation." Du Hachang nodded. His expression was relatively calm. "Brother Jiang, don't be impatient. I still say the same thing. We can't go. Once we go, it means we're giving in. It's not good for us." But Wang Qing's death is too strange. Yesterday Lu Xingji set up a banquet and Wang Qingze died at night. Right after he died, the Dark Thunder Guard sent an invitation. Lu Xingji is clearly telling us that Wang Qingze was killed by him. But Du Hachang said indifferently, "So what? Lu Xingji has some ability to be able to kill Wang Qingze, but the Wang family is only a small family after all." It didn't matter whether he was there or not. The more Lu Xingji acted like this, the more it proved that he was anxious. The more anxious he is, the less anxious we can be. Jiang Hao said, "Even so, I'm still a little worried. Brother Jiang worries too much. As long as Dark Thunder Manor doesn't have any spirit aperture realm experts, they won't be able to touch us. If it really is a life and death struggle, humph, not only will he lose his position as supervisor, he might even lose his life." Du Hachang's face revealed a fierce expression, and Jiang Hao's heart calmed down a little, and he silently agreed. By noon, only Leng Shiqi, Qiao Qian, and the other three were left in the Drunken Fragrance Inn. Leng Shiqi was still leisurely sipping his tea, while the other three were still in a daze. Of course they knew about Wang Qing's assassination, and they all guessed that it was Leng Shiqi's doing, but they couldn't figure out how Leng Shiqi did it. Especially Qiu Cheng and Xiao Qian, although they saw Leng Shiqi injure Pang Yuan in 2 moves and knew he was strong. But Wang Qingze was different. He was in the Wang family's courtyard. To kill Wang Qingze without anyone noticing was too difficult. Even a late-stage Spirit Pulse Realm cultivator might not be able to do it. "What time is it?" Leng Shiqi put down his teacup and asked. Xiao Qian said, "Sir, it's already past noon." "Well then let's eat." Xiao Qian. He had a feeling that something was going to happen again tonight. Night Zhong family. The Zhong family was considered a middle-tier family among the 9 great families, and the Zhong family's patriarch, Zhong Cheng, was a very interesting person. To put it nicely, he was cautious, but to put it bluntly, he was as timid as a mouse. His cultivation was also at the middle stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, and the reason why he was able to sit on the patriarch's seat was because of his eyes that were extremely sensitive to business opportunities. Tonight, Zhong Cheng's study was filled with people inside and outside. Outside, there were dozens of pure spirit realm cultivators constantly patrolling, and in every corner of the study, there were also spirit transformation realm guards. Zhong Cheng was afraid. He was afraid of walking on Wang Qing's path of retreat. Zhong Cheng saw that there were so many people here, and his heart calmed down a little. He was about to deal with the matter at hand, but a voice suddenly sounded in his ear. "Patriarch Zhong really does forget to eat and sleep for the family." Zhong Cheng's body suddenly stiffened, and a chill ran down his spine. He stiffly turned his head and saw a strong young man sitting on the chair beside him. And that young man was wearing the Dark Thunder Guard's clothes. He was Lu Xingji. Zhong Cheng was startled, but he suddenly realized that something was wrong. Were the guards in the room blind? He quickly glanced around and found that the guards were all standing still with their eyes wide open, as if they were stunned. They were already immersed in the beautiful world of flowers. Zhong Cheng couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He knew that since the other party could suddenly appear in front of him and control more than a dozen spirit transformation realm cultivators in an instant, if he dared to call for help, he would have already lost his life before the people outside arrived. His heart couldn't help but panic, but he was still a Spirit Pulse realm cultivator and the head of a family. He quickly calmed himself down and said, "So it's the supervisor envoy that has graced us with his presence. Excuse me for not going out to meet you." Leng Shiqi sat on the chair and habitually knocked on the armrest and said, "Then why don't you guess what I'm here for?" Zhong Cheng's face was instantly covered in cold sweat. He squeezed out a smile and said, "I don't dare to guess Lord Lu's intentions." Leng Shiqi took out a wooden box from his mustard seed bag and said, "Actually, I'm here to give Patriarch Zhong a gift." Zhong Cheng immediately laughed dryly and said, "Lord Lu is joking. Still giving a gift?" The other party couldn't wait to kill him. Leng Shiqi shook his head and said, "This envoy never jokes. Patriarch Zhong might as well open it and take a look." Zhongqing actually refused in his heart because he could already smell the pungent smell of blood from the box. But he still opened the wooden box, but when he saw what was inside, he immediately covered his mouth. Inside was a head. It was the head of the Lu family's patriarch. Although Zhongqing was already mentally prepared, he was still scared out of his wits. Leng Shiqi stood up and said, "Tomorrow this envoy will hold a banquet at the Drunken Fragrance House. I hope Patriarch Zhong will give me face." Zhongqing nodded frantically and said, "I'll definitely be there, I'll definitely be there." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.